So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Interstate I-95 Project Development and Environment Study, I-195 State Road 112 from Northwest 12th Avenue to State Road 907 Alton Road, FPID number 440228-2. This is the Alternatives Public Information Meeting. This is our virtual version. Today is February 26, 2024, and it's 6:01 p.m. Next slide, please. So these are our rules of engagement. Virtual attendees are automatically muted to start the meeting. To provide comments during the open discussion period, you may call 1-562-247-8422, access code 181-987-895. You may use the raise hand button feature during the comment period. You'll be unmuted in order of you raising your hands. You may also submit comments or questions in the question box that's located in the upper right-hand corner of your computer screen. And if for any reason you're having any technical difficulties, you may contact Vanessa Salinas at mrgmiami.com, or you may call her at 786-614-0050. Next slide, please. And at this time, thank you, Yvette. Go ahead.
Si necesita traducción durante la reunión, utilice el botón de levantar la mano y un miembro de nuestro equipo lo ayudará.
Gracias. And then John?
Si vous avez besoin de traduction pendant la réunion, ça, tant pis, pesez le bouton pour lever main en bas écran et puis un monde qui dans l'équipe non va aider.
Thank you, John. Next slide, please. So tonight's presenters will be our FDOT project manager, Yvette Fontanales, who you just heard from. Our consultant project manager, Robert Linares, is also here. We have our consultant project engineer, Stefan Escanes, and our environmental scientist, Caitlin Hill, who you're seeing on camera. I am also the community outreach specialist that's assisting the senior community outreach specialist, Alicia Gonzalez, on this contract. Next slide, please. So there were several different forms of notifications that was sent out for this particular project to advise those that may be within 300 feet or more of the project corridor. We had done advertisements through the Florida Administrative Register, property owner letters. We emailed project contact lists too as well. We also advertised through the FDOT project website. We sent out newspaper notifications through various different media, and we also did hand delivery too as well. Next slide, please. So the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA assignment, the environmental review, consultation, and other actions required by applicable federal environmental laws for this project are being or have been carried out by the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, pursuant to 23 U.S.C. 327 and a memorandum of understanding dated May 26, 2022, and executed by the Federal Highway Administration and FDOT. Next slide, please. So the Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964 is extremely important to the department. Public participation is solicited without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. Persons wishing to express concerns relative to FDOT compliance with Title VI may do so by contacting Tish Berger, the District 6 Title VI Coordinator, at 1000 North 111 Avenue, Miami, Florida 33172. You may call Tish at 305-470-5219, or you may email her at tish.berger at dot.state.fl.us. You may also contact the state Title VI coordinator, Stefan Kolowaski. You may reach him at 605 Swaney Street, Mail Station 65, Tallahassee, Florida 32399. You may call him at 850-414-4742, or you may email him at stefan.kolowaski@dot.state.fl.us. All inquiries or concerns will be handled according to FDOT's procedure in a prompt and courteous manner. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Yvette Fontanellas, and I am the project manager for the PD&E study for FDOT. In this slide, we showcase the FDOT compass, and in the slide, we highlight every single area that we cover in all our projects, and it's something that the state takes in consideration very much, and those are safety for all road users, workplace development, technology, community, resiliency, and robust supply chain. Next slide. In this slide, we showcase the study area. Our project run along the Causeway, beginning on the west side on Northwest 12th Avenue, which belongs to city of Miami, along I-195, ending at Alton Road, which belongs to city of Miami Beach. In our project, we will be addressing operational deficiencies along the corridor, enhancing system linkage and multimodal and regional connectivity, as well as improving the overall safety of the corridor. Next slide. So what is a PD&E study? This is a PD&E study is a project development and environmental study, which is a mix of engineering analysis, environmental analysis, and public involvement activities. This process is used by engineers and planners to determine what is the best location and the conceptual design of the preferred improvements in the roadway. In a project as big as this one, we begin our study with the planning phase. Our planning phase finished back in 2020, and that's when we began on our PD&E study a little bit later, June 2022. Moving forward, after the PD&E study, which is scheduled to finish by the end, like fall of 2025, we'll move forward into the final design and engineering. Moving then into the right-of-way acquisition, if it's needed, which most likely will be, moving into construction, and then maintaining the improvements in perpetuity. And there is always opportunities for public engagement throughout the PD&E phase. Next slide. During the PD&E process, there are several steps to cover. First, we will and have been collecting data. We have been collecting engineering data, survey, traffic data, and the existing condition of the area. Moving next into the alternative development, this data gets analyzed. We develop alternative, screening those alternatives, and construct our traffic analysis. After that, we will perform environmental analysis in conjunction with the alternative, and moving then into the design of the engineering analysis. We refine those alternatives and provide a report, which is an interchange access request. And at the end, we will gather all those documents to provide acceptance for the location design concept acceptance, moving into the design phase of the project. Next slide. As part of the background, there is and according to Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization and the Long Range Transportation Plan, our population is expected to increase by 67% and by 38% by employment by the year 2045. There are several capacity and operational deficiencies areas that are expected to worsen if we don't make any improvements. As shown on the exhibit on the right, we can see the causeway. We can see the interchange I-95, I-195, the causeway, and the junction at the end of the limits with Alton Road. Next slide. As part of the safety, there are several locations that have been identified with in the high crash list within the corridor and multiple clusters of accident. And this indicates that there is a safety concern that we need to address. There is also lack of bicycle and pedestrian connectivity between both cities, City of Miami and City of Miami Beach. And we are evaluating opportunities to better these connections, the lack of bicycle and pedestrian. Next slide. Now we'll continue with the presentation. Robert from Metric, which is our project engineer. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette, and good evening, everyone. Now that you have an understanding of kind of the background and the needs driving the project, I'm going to get into a little more specifics in terms of what the existing conditions are out there, and then that's going to transition to what our overall approach is, and then we're going to get into some of the alternatives that are being considered right now in order to address the safety and operational and lack of multimodal features currently associated with this facility. So it is a limited access expressway. It's an interstate system. In general terms, there's 3 lanes in each direction, and there's major interchanges. There's a systems interchange with I-95, and you have service interchanges at North Miami Avenue, at US 1 Biscayne Boulevard, and at Alton Road. Also, a couple of important characteristics associated with the corridor within the City of Miami side. You have very limited right-of-way. You have a number of existing buildings, residences, both in commercial, that abut right up against the existing right-of-way of the interstate. So that is obviously a major constraint on the project. And then we're also traversing a very environmentally sensitive area over Biscayne Bay on the causeway that connects with the City of Miami to Miami Beach. Next slide. Discussing a little bit further the safety issue that Yvette mentioned, within the analysis years of 2017 to 2021, there was almost 8,000 total crashes within our project study area, with a significant number of crashes concentrated within the I-95 interchange, as well as the US 1 interchange and with Alton Road. And you can also, we've also highlighted here the number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes associated along the corridor, as well as the overall fatal crashes that have taken place during that time. So, you know, from a vehicular standpoint, a lot of the safety issues stem from the poor operating conditions. And then, of course, we need to look at all the ramp termini and those access points in terms of how we can better improve the pedestrian and bicycle safety associated with those locations. Next slide, please. From a traffic standpoint, you know, currently there is already a high demand associated with this facility and poor operating conditions at a number of the interchanges. To help us perform, to detail this information and to help us in our analysis, we performed an extensive traffic data collection effort during the fall and winter of 2022. Taking all that information and using Miami-Dade County's forecasting models to develop our design year traffic for the year 2050. That effort is currently ongoing, and we are looking in detail at not only the existing conditions, but what that looks like in the future, in the year 2050, without any improvements, as well as with some of the proposed build improvements that we're going to be discussing. And we're going to look at not only at the interstate and the associated interchanges, but also looking at the surface street operations. We understand that a lot of the issues that currently plague I-195 stem from the poor operating conditions on the surface street and how that then backs up to the interstate. So all that is part of our analysis as well. And that will all be documented into our systems interchange modification report, which is a very comprehensive traffic document that is reviewed both locally in Tallahassee and also by the Federal Highway Administration. Next slide, please. As part of the process in a PD&E, once you understand what the needs are, then you look to develop alternatives to effectively address those needs. And the first step in that process is we always maintain a no build, and that is a scenario where no improvement takes place, and it really serves as a baseline by which we compare all of our build alternatives against. We also build into all of our alternatives what's called the Transportation Systems Management and Operations, or TSM&O. These are alternatives that include, or options that include ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems, and any neat technology that can be applied to the corridor to help improve the efficiency of the existing corridor without large capital expenditures. Then we also look at major build alternatives in order to adequately address the current and forecasted safety and traffic needs associated with the corridor. We are looking at a number of build alternatives that have some system-wide implications, primarily being the need to connect the express lanes with I-195. Currently, there is no access from I-195 to the existing express lanes on I-95. This project looks to provide that connection to facilitate residents not only of this area of Miami, but of Miami Beach to have access to the express lanes. We're also going to look at interchange improvements, not only with I-95, but at all the surface interchanges that I previously mentioned, Miami Avenue, Biscayne Boulevard, and Alton Road. We're going to look at the surface streets and see how some of these key intersections in and around the interstate can be improved. So I'll look to really provide one comprehensive solution for the corridor, and the need to look at multimodal enhancements. How can we partner with Miami-Dade County to make sure that we can help them deliver on their vision of transit for this corridor? And we're also going to be looking at dedicated pedestrian and bicycle facilities, as well as any other safety improvements that can be done within the corridor. Next slide, please. There is a process to how we end up with our recommendation. And like I said, we start with these different levels of alternatives, the no build, the TSM&O, and these major build alternatives. We then develop conceptual alternatives in which we look at both system-wide concepts, such as the express lane connectivity, the transit enhancements, and the multimodal enhancements. And then we look at interchange-specific concepts to see what are the best alternatives that can be looked at for each of these specific locations. We then combine those into what we call these system alternatives. And today we're going to be presenting two system-wide alternatives, Alternative 1 and Alternative 2, which Stefan will shortly go into greater detail on. Once we have our public meetings, this is the virtual meeting and then the in-person meeting, and take all of the input that we get from the community. We go back, we further our analysis, we take that feedback to refine our alternatives, and then we move forward with the preferred alternative that is presented at the public hearing before the culmination of the project. Next slide, please. In order to assist us to analyze the project and develop alternatives to address the needs that have been stated, we've segmented the project into 4 focus areas. We're calling focus area number 1, which is the area in and around the I-95, I-195 interchange. Focus area number 2, from the interchange to Biscayne Bay, which is the area with Miami Avenue and Biscayne Boulevard ramps, and within the city of Miami. Then the focus area number 3, which is the Causeway, which is the most delicate and sensitive from an environmental standpoint. And then focus area 4, it's eastern terminus at Miami Beach, and making sure that the connections to the beach, and then we take into account improvements to make sure that the transition from the interstate to the surface street system is adequately handled. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stefan Askanis, our project engineer, to discuss some of the details of the alternatives that are currently under consideration. Stefan?
Thank you, Robert. So beginning with focus areas 1 and 2 and looking at an overall overview of the two alternatives that are currently being considered. You have alternative 1 on the top and alternative 2 on the bottom. One of the key components for these two alternatives is the connection of I-195 with the I-95 express lanes. That is the large black line that you can see cutting across the aerial image. So for alternative 1, a viaduct upper level is introduced along 195, which connects the express lanes of I-95. In alternative 2, this access is further enhanced by also providing access to and from the express lanes with the local interchanges of North Miami Avenue and US 1. Moving a little bit to the east, looking at North Miami Avenue interchange under alternative 1, the North Miami Avenue is upgraded from its current partial interchange, which only includes ramps to and from the west, to a full interchange, which adds the eastern ramps, so the westbound off ramp and the eastbound on ramp. This full interchange also introduces a collector distributor system between North Miami Avenue and US 1. Under alternative 2, North Miami Avenue remains as the partial interchange. And then move into Biscayne US 1 interchange under alternative 1. A displaced left turn intersection configuration is proposed for the US 1 and Northeast 38th Street intersection. We'll see a few more details coming up on that. And then under alternative 2, US 1 interchange is completely reconfigured in this case. Under both alternatives, there's bus on shoulder that's proposed on both the upper and lower levels, which we'll see additional information on this next slide. Next slide. So looking at some of the details for focus area 1, which is the interchange with I-95 and those improvements. As mentioned previously, you can see on the typical section on the top right, the 2 levels with the viaduct upper level I-195 section. The key improvements here under alternative 1 are providing ramp connections from this upper level system to I-95, providing connections both to the express lanes and the general use lanes. In addition, the bus on shoulder operations are introduced within this focus area. As you can see here, they begin just east of the interchange and just west of Northwest 3rd Avenue. There's also an additional ramp, as shown in the bottom right corner of the slide, which provides access to the upper level for traffic coming from southbound I-95 and traffic from northbound I-95 to the upper level. This will allow traffic to bypass the interchanges of North Miami Avenue and US 1, continuing straight to the Causeway and Miami Beach. Next slide. Looking at alternative 2 for the same area, a little bit more ramps here, as you can tell from the previous image. And really this is in order to provide additional connection and access from the express lane system to North Miami Avenue and US 1. So as you can see here, there are a number of ramps from the upper level and express lanes that are provided. In addition, this also includes the beginning and end of the bus on shoulder, similar to alternative 1. And all of the ramp movements from the lower level to the upper level also occur within this interchange area, unlike the previous alternative, which had a ramp a little further east, as previously described. Next slide. Moving into the North Miami Avenue for alternative 1 and US 1 improvements as well. So this alternative includes the full interchange with North Miami Ave. As previously mentioned, this adds the westbound off-ramp and eastbound on-ramp to North Miami Avenue. In order to provide these ramps, a collector distributor system is introduced between the interchanges of North Miami Avenue and US 1. What these collector and distributor systems do is that they process the traffic coming up, for example, westbound on from US 1 and traffic that's also wanting to get off westbound at the new ramp at North Miami Avenue, it allows those lane changes and movements to occur outside of the main line where speeds are lowered. This separates those potential speed differentials, a key safety element in order to introduce the new ramps at North Miami Avenue. In addition, the US 1 interchange is improved by implementing what is called a displaced left turn intersection. This is the detail that's shown on the right side of the screen. And beginning with the image furthest to the right, that shows the entire picture of the displaced left turn movement. It consists of taking the southbound left turn movements, crossing them over to the east side of Biscayne Boulevard so that they can then access the westbound on-ramp, operating concurrently with northbound and southbound traffic and saving on overall signal phasing time. So you have a detail here of that crossover intersection, which is further north around 42nd Street. And then where they perform the left turn from the east side of Biscayne Boulevard to northeast 38th Street. Also shown here is the typical section of what this would look like for this segment with the collector distributor system as a whole for I-195. So you can see here the wider section with the collector distributor system, CD roads on the side, and then the upper level viaduct on the top. The bus on shoulder elements are provided also throughout this section. And one of the key components here is really looking to eliminate conflicted movements with the introduction of these collector distributor systems as well as these crossover intersections. Next slide. So as previously mentioned in the overview, the North Miami Avenue intersection remains as its existing partial interchange with only the ramps to and from the west. However, US 1 is reconfigured under alternative 2, beginning with the top left here of the slide, the new southbound Biscayne Boulevard direct ramp to westbound I-195 lower level. What this ramp does is it removes the significant southbound left traffic from the intersection with Northeast 38th Street and eliminates that conflict both operationally and safety, and from a safety and overall just high conflict of vehicles between northbound and southbound lefts. The existing loop ramp from Northeast 38th Street is removed and relocated further east. This is in order to provide enough separation for the two ramps to be able to operate and still service the northbound to westbound movement. So as you can see, this is shifted further to the east. In the bottom left corner, there's a loop ramp introduced from Northeast 36th Street to eastbound I-195. With this new ramp, the existing loop ramp is eliminated, again due to spacing of ramps along 195, and the eastbound off ramp to US 1 is instead introduced via what's called a Texas U-turn ramp. You can see in baby blue over to the right. So traffic continues east, loop back around onto Northeast 38th Street to then go north or south, removing all of this traffic from the Northeast 36th Street intersection, and the improvements at that intersection between the loop ramp and the reconfigured eastbound off ramp significantly reduces overall traffic within that intersection operationally, and again with the safety benefits that come with that. Looking at the overall typical section, so the cross section of I-195, you can see how narrower it is under this alternative without the collector distributor system, and also with the lower and upper levels. This alternative also includes the bus on shoulder operations on both levels. And now one thing to look at, and this is in both alternatives, is the shared use path here that begins on both the north and south sides of the intersection of the interchange, moving into focus areas 3 and 4 over the bay. Next slide. So with the shared use path coming in into this area, we move into focus areas 3 and 4 and looking at the overview of improvements for both alternatives. Alternative 1 continues the shared use path on the south side only. So a crossover is introduced on the western bridge of the causeway. In alternative 2, this shared use path is present on both the north and south sides, and therefore a crossover is introduced on the eastern bridge of the causeway in order to connect in with the existing path that's located on the south side of I-195 heading towards Alton Road. You can see these shared use paths on the south side and north and south sides in these two rendered typical sections, cross sections. Bus on shoulder is also present in both alternatives across the entire of the causeway. So this is an improvement that is currently, the construction is being finalized right now and is being maintained within this project. Moving to the eastern side of the causeway into focus area 4, we have some safety improvements related to the westbound on-ramps. A lot of speed differentials exist today between traffic coming from Alton Road and traffic coming from 41st Street, where 41st Street has a little bit more time to begin speeding up compared to Alton Road, which is coming in at a slower speed and performing merge maneuvers. So this separates those two traffic to reduce the amount of sideswipe instances and crashes that have historically occurred. In addition, additional capacity is provided at the entrance to Mount Sinai in order to reduce backups and improve the overall capacity and operations between the high left turn, northbound left turn movements and southbound through movements at that intersection of Alton Road and 43rd Street, which is the entrance to Mount Sinai. Next slide. So with all these alternatives across, the entirety of the project comes a lot of engineering analysis. Drainage is extremely important along this project as stormwater runoff flows into the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve, which is an outstanding Florida water. There are a number of drainage basins within the project area, and overall the water quality treatment capacity is available within the existing right-of-way. The team has prepared a high water memorandum and has been discussing, what is that high water level in terms of sea level rise to take into account resiliency initiatives and to coordinate that with other agencies. From a structures perspective, I'm sure as you can see throughout the alternatives, there's a number of new structures that are introduced, and that includes the upper level viaduct, new interchange ramps. Depending on which alternative, you have anywhere from 10 to 20 new interchange ramps, as well as widening of the causeway bridges. There is a difference in right-of-way impacts between the two alternatives. One of the key contributors being the collector distributor system between North Miami Avenue and US 1. And then as we develop these improvements, we also look at what are some of the short-term and long-term improvements and opportunities that can be perhaps phased. Next slide. And with that, I will hand it to Kaylin, our environmental scientist.
Thank you, Stefan. As Stefan's mentioned and Robert mentioned as well, there are several sensitive environmental features and parts of this project area that are incredibly sensitive. As part of the environmental analysis that's conducted throughout the alternative refinement process, we have to consider them and document them in several different technical reports that we prepare. Notably, we do have essential fish habitat present. Our regional fishery council acknowledges several different types of habitats that could be EFH or essential fish habitat. Notably, we do have both seagrass and corals present within the project area. We've conducted preliminary benthic surveys in summer of 2022 based on the corridor planning study alternatives that Robert mentioned before, the previous phases of this project before we began our study. So we did go out and look just to generally confirm seagrass. So we do anticipate that there would be direct impacts to seagrass as a result of this project. We also did identify some small corals, but those would be easily relocated prior to construction. We will be going back out again this upcoming seagrass monitoring season once we have refined alternatives to get more detailed information about those impacts. We also have several different considerations for wildlife and their habitat, as there's several different state listed and federally listed species that are present within this project area. Florida bonneted bat is one species we may have to conduct specialized surveys for, depending on the alternative that's refined. Biscayne Bay is also a designated aquatic preserve within the project area, has been mentioned. There's several different U.S. Fish and Wildlife consultation areas. There's habitat areas of particular concern established for the spiny Caribbean lobster, and it's also designated critical habitat for the manatee. And as mentioned before, the surface waters within the project are designated as outstanding Florida water, which requires greater quality water quality treatment. All these would be documented in a technical report called a natural resources evaluation. Next slide. Within the social environment, we do have protected populations that exist within the project area, low income and minority populations that'll be considered throughout the life and of the project and documented in a sociocultural effects evaluation to ensure that there's no disproportionate impacts to any protected populations. There are Section 4F for recreational facilities within the project area, such as Moore Park, which is located southwest of the central interchange of I-195 and I-95. Also Albert Pollock Park, which is just north of the westbound I-95 off-ramp onto Biscayne Boulevard. So those will be considered throughout the study as well. We've also been coordinating already with those officials with jurisdiction. Then there's considerations within the physical environment for contamination that will be documented in a contamination screening evaluation report. Most of these are related to petroleum contamination, such as storage tanks or old gas facilities, gas stations. We'll be documenting those to ensure that there's no spreading of contamination from groundwater as a result of this project. Next slide. And finally, this project area is very sensitive and provides a lot of opportunities for resiliency, and several different organizations have been studying this area, trying to come up with potential pilot project or resiliency initiatives. We've been tracking those throughout this study to see what types of alternatives and pilot projects are being developed. We've also been coordinating with some of the local agency groups, such as our local resiliency offices, to directly see if there's a way to fit some of these different project ideas within the footprint of the alternative that's ultimately refined and selected. These studies include the Army Corps' Back Bay Coastal Storm Risk Management Feasibility Study. This is still in development. We wouldn't have alternatives until next year, but they do propose several different things, such as living seawalls starting at Edgewater at our project and continuing south, as well as living shoreline designs along the western portion of Biscayne Bay, along the mainland side of Miami. Additionally, also looking at mangrove restoration, such as the Tuttle Causeway Island in the center there. There's also the Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Advisory and Task Force, which is working on a living shoreline guidance document. So we'll be coordinating with them to see what they've been developing. The City of Miami Beach has conducted a living shoreline viability assessment a few years ago and identified the seawall at the eastern portion of our project area as being suitable and preferred due to the length and not having any neighbors or conflicts nearby. Selected this as suitable for a living shoreline or seawall design. Also, a small area of potential mangrove planting, which is actually exposed at low tide. And in addition, there's also a project that's next to us that's been given a grant from the state to conduct a sponge water quality restoration project, and that's in the Venetian Basin just south of us, just something that we have on our map to show for projects nearby. Next slide. And for that, I'll hand it back to Stefan for the rest of the physical environmental.
Thank you, Caitlin. So along the project corridor, we have a number of noise sensitive areas. This varies from high-rise residential to low density residential, such as single family homes. Then we also have mixed use residential commercial properties, as well as recreational resources. Within the project area, there are 3 existing noise barriers. These are all on the west side of the project. Those are shown there as the blue lines. So 2 of them near I-95 within that interchange, and then over on the eastern side, the south side of 195, just before Biscayne Bay, just west of there. Our next steps are going to include performing traffic noise monitoring and then evaluating potential noise impacts from the proposed improvements to determine if any additional noise abatement is warranted throughout the project corridor, any potential impacts to the existing noise barriers that exist there today as well, and identifying properties along the project corridor that may be sensitive to construction and noise vibration impacts, such as the Mount Sinai Medical Center. Next slide. And I'll hand it back off to Robert and us for the public involvement.
Thank you, Stefan. You know, on a project of this magnitude, you know, the public outreach and public feedback is very important to the department and to us to not only get the word out, but to really help us to refine the concepts that are being developed. This meeting tonight is just part of an ongoing process that started, you know, with the initial kickoff meeting in the project in February of 2023, with a formal alternatives public information meeting tonight and on the 28th, and culminating looking in the public hearing in the first quarter of 2025. However, those are just some of the major public meetings. There are a number of past and ongoing and future coordination efforts with the City of Miami and Miami Beach, with Miami-Dade County. We just recently presented to a number of the TPO subcommittees here during the month of February. We presented to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, to the Transportation Planning Technical Committee, to the Transportation Aesthetics Review Committee, and the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. We also have two group of stakeholders that we've put together to, again, help us put the word out to the community in terms of this project and to get as much engagement and feedback as possible. We have a project advisory team that has met now twice, back in November of 2022 and now recently here on February 15th. And we also have a community advisory group that's also met 2 times and just recently last week on the 22nd. Again, the idea is that this is just one point in time, but we're going to continue these conversations as we take all the feedback that we have been receiving, refine our alternatives, and continue again trying to engage the public throughout the duration of the project. Next slide, please. You know, that coordination involves also with a number of other agencies, including other projects within the Department of Transportation. There is, sort of, for all of you who work and live in this area, understand that there is a lot going on, both present and future. You have the upcoming FDOT Golden Glades Interchange Enhancement Project. You have the I-195 Signature Bridge project to the south. You have the Bus on Shoulders lane along the Causeway under construction. You have future plans for the north-south line of the beach corridor along Miami Avenue, a number of improvements on Alton Road. So we understand that this project can address all of the needs along the corridor, and that it really needs to work in concert with our partners to come up with an overall solution that effectively addresses the needs of the community. Next slide, please. From a schedule standpoint, previously at the onset of the presentation, our project manager, Yvette, went over the overall study or timeline in an FDOT project from the time you're in planning to when it's built. In terms of where we are right now in the PD&E process that started in June 2022, where we had our agency kickoff meetings that I described, and now right now we're really in one of the busiest times in terms of the public outreach. We've developed some initial alternatives, and now it's about getting the word out and getting as much feedback as we can from the community. So as you can see here where it says we are here at the alternatives public meeting, we'll take all the feedback, we'll go back, we'll perform additional environmental and engineering analysis, refine our alternatives, and then move forward to a public hearing, likely at the beginning of 2025, with the study culminating currently planned for the fall of 2025. Next slide, please. That concludes the formal part of our presentation. I'll pass it back over to Paulette now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. As a reminder, on our screens right now, you'll see the contact information for our project team. Yvette Quintanales, our project manager, who you heard from, Robert Linares, who you just heard from, our consultant project manager. And joining us on screen right now is the Senior Community Outreach Specialist, Alicia Gonzalez from Media Relations Group. Alicia, take it away.
Thank you so much. So before we move on to the Q&A and comment section of our meeting this evening, first and foremost, thank you for being very patient. The way we conduct these meetings when we're doing it virtual and when we do it Wednesday in person is that we show the entire presentation and then of course we move on to the questions. Additionally, I want to make sure that everybody on their right-hand side of the panel has the handout section. If you click on that arrow, you will see 4 handouts. So all this is on our website. We're just, re-uploading it here just to make sure you have it. But the presentation we just did is here. The 2 alternatives are here, and then a handout that has an abbreviated version of these alternatives. Any of these documents can be distributed to friends, neighbors, organizations, and then of course, as you saw several times, we have a website with all this information. I want to start by recognizing that I saw, let me make sure you're still here, Miami-Dade County Commissioner Eileen Higgins, as well as her aide, Ana Montes. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to give you an opportunity to start with a comment if either one of you would like. If not, we can go directly to the questions that I have in the box so far. I think I no longer see, there she is, yes. So I see Commissioner Higgins still on. Would you like to make a comment or wait until we go through some of our questions, Commissioner? Oh, and just
she's saying she's happy. I'm sorry, Alicia. Commissioner Higgins is saying she's happy to comment. I'm not sure she's able to unmute herself.
Okay. Oh, I see it now. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Well, Alicia, Paulette, team, thanks as always for doing your darndest to keep the public updated on big projects like these that you're trying to make sure that things are getting safer and traffic's moving a little bit better while balancing, I think, the needs of a lot of us, because you're working in a neighborhood on both sides of the causeway that
Absolutely.
are filled with residents, more and more pedestrians. And, so I realize that's a tough balancing act for FDOT. I think there's a lot of good, you've picked out a lot of good things that I think all of us know are problematic. Certainly as you're getting off the Julia Tuttle, that Biscayne Bay intersection is a hot mess. I don't know if that's a technical FDOT work.
A pretty nice way to say it, Commissioner, so it's okay.
Okay, it's a hot mess. And so I'm glad to see some thought going into that. Definitely, as you, I'm not sure if this team knows, but our Northeast Corridor commuter rail line is advancing very rapidly. We've gotten our NEPA clearance. FTA was here doing their risk assessment study. And we've gotten $105 million from the state. So that project, hallelujah, the commuter rail line will probably be under construction maybe late 2025. And one of the stations is at 41st Street, which is pretty close. And I saw no mention in your analysis of how this interchange may or may not work with that, because in an ideal world, we'd get people coming down from Aventura and up from downtown, and then there would be good bus connections that would scooch over the Tuttle from there. And as you all probably are aware, Broward is probably 2 years behind, but they have 6 additional stops on that Coastal Link rail line that they're in the
Correct.
works. So I didn't really see anything about that. So you should probably check in with DTPW and SFRTA and the rest about what the plans are there to make sure that what you're thinking about doing so close to those train tracks doesn't that they work together on that. I'm happy to hear you all mention that it'd be nice to see if we could connect Miami Beach onto the express lanes. I think that is, certainly would be a problem to get people north. As you know, when you're going towards the east, the Miami Avenue exit is a hot mess. Where you have 2 lanes of the highway backing up. I'm not sure what you can do about it because, you are heading into Midtown, but happy to at least see that exit explored. Continue to hear the word bus on shoulder, which on the negative side makes my skin crawl because that is not what I have advocated for over the years. We want dedicated bus lanes. And at least on the part when you're on the causeway, it seems like the bus lanes are in the middle. And I want those to be real bus lanes. Like they cannot be bus on shoulder where every now and then there's traffic and people can pull over in them. And I mean, that's ridiculous. We have the space on that causeway. No one can tell me we don't to have a dedicated bus lane and then a shoulder for disabled vehicles on the right-hand side or the outer lane. And so maybe it's a misnomer because they keep saying it's bus on shoulder, but I don't know if you've ever been on the bus on the shoulder, or driven on the shoulder on the causeway. It's like boom, 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 boom. And if you're pregnant, you could deliver your child on a bus on shoulder construction. So I really want dedicated bus lanes. Our residents deserve that. They come from a long way, particularly if they're going across that causeway. Many of them are coming from as far away as Miami Gardens and even as far away as Broward County. So I don't know if it's a misnomer that you're really going to do protected bus lanes or not, or that's some weird FDOT terminology that says you're going to build a crappy cheap lane and you're going to put our bus users on it. And bear in mind, if people are on the bus, they're low wage workers. Like no, I don't want to say nobody loves riding the bus. Some people do. I ride the bus, but in general, these are folks that can't afford to travel to the low wage jobs that the city of Miami Beach provides for them. And they can't afford to park when they get there. So we should do everything we can to make their rides as comfortable and as safe as possible. Thrilled to see the shared use path being looked at and the 2 alternatives, which really need to be there's plenty of space for that, so happy to see that. So in all of that, that's kind of the stuff I'm happy to see. The double deckering, man, I just can't believe you can't find a solution, particularly if you build good bus lanes for us, that doesn't involve a double decker project. And may I remind you that the Florida Department of Transportation is in the middle of making the lives of the residents of the city of Miami and the lives of the residents of the city of Miami Beach absolute misery with that double deckering project and that signature bridge that nobody needs or wants, but we're getting anyway. I was involved with the launch of that bridge, or not, I wasn't involved, but I was there, whatever, at where it was announced in 2019 that it would be finished in 2023. Not sure if you've noticed, but it's already 2024 and FDOT is hedging its bets to 2028 on that. Now that you guys have taken over the MDX GMX, the double deckering of that has created a traffic nightmare further west. And that project seems no closer to completion today than pretty much when it started. So I remain very, very skeptical of our communities wanting another big dig project, 15 to 20 blocks from where you guys are already implementing a big dig. So you're going to have to really freaking convince me on that. Particularly because all you're doing, in my opinion, is, I guess, maybe you make some of the, exchanges a little easier, but anybody that you're dumping on the Causeway to Miami Beach is still going to be bottlenecked at Alton Road. Alton Road's not getting any bigger. It's the same, you're not going to put all those here. We're not going to eminent domain and put all those businesses out and bulldoze houses. So, and the same thing when you're going the other way. So not convinced we need all of that induced demand by a double-decker highway. So lots of, you guys are trying to solve 25 problems, but I think in the double-decker, you're going to create the 26th problem without focusing on solving, 20 of the 25. It is impossible in this area to eliminate traffic. Impossible, right? If you guys were, angels from heaven and had superpowers, it couldn't be done. And so I think we're much better off making sure our buses work well. We can do some mixed uses. We make those the exchanges safer for people, and particularly, those interchanges on the Miami side, pedestrians walk past them, right? So making sure that they're super safe for pedestrians is helpful. So anyway, those are my thoughts and comments, and I won't take up any more time because I've already taken up more than I deserve, and I'm happy to meet with the team in more detail with my office. And again, Alicia, I see Robert, Steph, and Yvette, you guys always do a wonderful job at keeping us all informed, and sometimes we love your things and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we love part of your things and sometimes we hate others. So, and this is the case with me today. I have a love-hate relationship with this project. So thanks again for all that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. You are extremely kind, very professional. And I do have to say, one of our single greatest advocates as far as being involved in our projects, and we just appreciate you on all of our projects, because not only can you give us all these sides, but we appreciate that you understand that the department is balancing a lot. But the way you get involved in our projects, honestly, is the greatest thing we could ask for. I am going to make a couple of comments, and then I'm going to take some of the issues you brought up and have different members of my team address them. I see that some of the stuff in the question box is similar. And just for everybody's edification, we do put, mute attendees while we're either talking or an attendee is talking for obvious reasons, not because we're going to silence you at all, but just out of, the being able to speak as you would be speaking if you were in a public meeting, and it's very difficult not to speak over each other on these virtual meetings. So I guarantee you we will be here as late as we need to get through everybody's questions and comments. But we do ask that you understand that if you find yourself muted, understand that we will unmute you as we either get to your question or we see your hand raised. One of the first things I do want to highlight is the commissioner discussed the advancement of the Northeast Corridor, which is phenomenal. And maybe Robert, I see, by the way, that Juan Mendieta is with us. Thank you so much, Juan, for being here. We know how busy you are. Juan is the Chief External Officer from DTPW, and we are meeting on a very regular basis, as you would imagine, with DTPW. But maybe, Robert, you can explain a little bit about how you incorporate that and how the life of the project, as things go, rapidly advancing, thank God in the SMART plan, we can continue to adapt to what those projects are becoming, including, like the commissioner said, the Broward Commuter Rail, which is also advancing in its PD&E.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you, Commissioner, for your feedback. I mean, I think in terms of time horizon for our project, we're scheduled to wrap up this project the end of 2025. That moves forward into design, and depending on the scope of the project at that point, right-of-way acquisition. and you're looking into, you know, the mid 2030s in terms of construction and ultimately build. So as we all know, a lot can happen between now and then, but we are aware of these projects. And I think while there's not a direct impact from this project to potentially that station, of course, the accessibility to that station and how this project can help improve the movement, both from a transit standpoint and vehicular and pedestrian and otherwise, through this area as you're traversing in and around the Interstate I-195 is something that, of course, we're striving to accomplish as part of this project.
I do want to point out, I'd be remiss to not advise that Yosiel Ferrer has also joined us, Assistant Director at the Department of Transportation and Public Works for Miami-Dade County. And I also see a couple of my City of Miami Beach friends, so I appreciate you all being there. I think the next thing that the commissioner brought up, which I know we will have a lot of questions about, can we talk a little bit about what she said on the North Miami Avenue area? Because we know that's an area of concern in general.
Okay, so I mean, there was a lot. I think there was a lot of different ways to, you know, to approach these areas. As you know, we're dealing with a very constrained corridor in terms of right-of-way. You know, as we discussed, there is a lot of, you know, both residential and commercial that directly abuts the project corridor, and there's just a lot of high density, not only currently, but as everyone knows, planned for the area as well. So while definitely you're never going to be able to completely solve the, you know, the traffic congestion, and unfortunately, you know, with that traffic congestion, there's a safety component and the associated increases in crashes. You do need to look at innovative solutions, which is what has brought in that the viaduct to try to create space to address these operational and safety issues within a very limited right-of-way. And in doing so, the hopes is not necessarily that you're adding capacity, but that you're really separating the movements that are destined to Miami Beach from the movements that are really trying to get on and off in the design and Wynwood area, which is one thing that really the viaduct does well, is that it separates completely those through movements from those local movements, which, so, you know, currently you have so much backup associated with Miami Avenue and Biscayne Boulevard, and how that cues on to the interstate and both, you know, the operational and safety issues that result in that. The idea is to, as best we can, without impacting significant amount of right-of-way, how can we best separate that traffic? Again, these are concepts that we're looking at, and obviously there's pluses and minuses when you look at these big projects, and construction-related impacts and duration is absolutely one of them. And, you know, as also a resident of this area, understanding the impacts associated with the project to the south. So, I mean, we're definitely aware of those concerns, but if we're really trying to make significant improvements to the, you know, to the current conditions that are plaguing Biscayne and 36th and 38th Street, Miami Avenue, and all the surrounding area, it is going to take, I understand, a total approach where you are looking at major capital improvements, but we also, which is why we have our partners with Miami-Dade Transit, see how can we partner with what they're planning for the corridor, and how can we best facilitate that so that we do have a comprehensive type solution in place moving forward for this project. So I definitely, you know, there's so many details with this, so I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to go, you know, that we can go to and sit down with you, Commissioner, to kind of go into some of the greater details and the reasons why, you know, some of these, you know, options are being proposed, and to hear, you know, and, you know, to further that conversation with you.
And I think, Robert, the other issue, which again, I'm not sure, since that is really a DTPW long-term decision, but do you want to address, and feel free to tell me we're not able to do that right now, the, you know, obvious concerns the commissioner has with bus on shoulder, and what potential jurisdiction or any direction you have as it relates to dedicated bus lanes
Yeah,
within
I mean,
this, our ability.
yeah, I mean, that's something that from a scope standpoint, dedicated bus lanes is not something just from, the capacity that's going to be available once you separate these traffic movements and the connectivity that you're going to be able to provide with the express lanes and the potential, bus express rapid transit from the Golden Glades, utilizing now these new connections to the express lanes on that higher level to Miami Beach, is something that even in its current design without dedicated bus lanes, it's going to provide an incredible service, uninterrupted service for the most part. And then yes, these options do look at bus on shoulders full width, where this is not something that we'd be retrofitting to try to make a bus fit in one of these facilities. It would be designed at full width of a standard lane. We understand issues such as drainage structures, impact rideability, and other issues. Those are all things that we absolutely would take into consideration in terms of the overall width, in terms of the design of that facility. So it's not something that's an afterthought, but something that's designed accordingly to be able to take as best advantage of the limited right-of-way that we have out there as possible.
Okay, I do want to bring up real quick, Sebastian Ruiz's comment in my question box says that his browser version wasn't working but his GoTo app is working. If you all could maybe raise the hand if anyone is having or aware of any difficulties. This platform is the statewide mandated platform for our meetings. I know it is not a platform that most of you are familiar with or that you use on a regular basis. So you're welcome to, raise your hand for us and also put any technical issues, if you can, in the chat box. And then if not, we absolutely have our folks that Paulette mentioned standing by to be able to assist you. So I'm going to move on now to Matthew McIntosh. I'm going to read your question first. I'll have my team answer, and then we'll unmute you if you have a follow-up. We do ask that everyone is courteous to allow, at least one full round of questions from everybody, unless we definitely did not address what you needed. But like I said, we can do, further rounds as you think of additional questions, throw them in this question box. We will be here till they're all answered. So Matthew's question, team, is, has FDOT examined an alternative that would consist solely of multimodal enhancements, such as repurposing an existing lane to be bus only? I'm going to go ahead and make a statement, even though I'm not the engineer, because we've been getting a lot of these comments. And I just want to remind everyone on this call that the Department of Transportation only has jurisdiction over its roadways in a certain capacity, right? My engineers will describe that better. Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works, as you heard the commissioner mention, is the agency that is responsible and has jurisdiction for all of, what we would consider multimodal enhancements, right? So buses, rail, etc. We work very closely together to try to make those two things happen. But this team and these particular engineers have been given by federal guidelines a certain amount of, guidelines that they have to follow when they're doing a project development and environment study. And some of the stuff that is up on the chat or we've been receiving is outside of the scope of that we cannot dip into. However, we are in, as Robert mentioned, constant communication, constantly working with our partners to make sure that everything is included. And no doubt our overall goal with all the transportation agencies in Miami-Dade County is to have a much more multimodal, transit-friendly, bike, pedestrian, everything friendly system. So that is definitely a goal of all of ours, but I don't know I think you already just answered the existing lane being bus only, but I don't know if you want to add anything, Robert or Stefan.
No, I mean, I guess the only thing that may be worth adding that, multimodal connectivity is absolutely something that we're looking at. And, and we've obviously with, not only with the potential, like I mentioned, Bus Express to the Golden Glades, but we understand the heavy connection, to the 112 as well. But a lot of the issues that we're looking at addressing as part of this project is not a demand issue where we need to provide more capacity. A lot of it is operational in nature. So providing a dedicated transit lane, let's say in and of itself, we're not looking for additional capacity. We're looking to address the safety and operational issues with all these closely spaced interchanges, how they're so short that they back up completely onto the interstate, how that results in crashes or results in delays. How because of that and how closely the intersections are on the surface street, it results in gridlock for the community. And then that also has a safety implication, operational. It has air, noise quality implications. So a lot of those issues have to be addressed independent of just saying, hey, we're just going to have just a transit lane on this project, because it's not just, we're not adding additional capacity on the causeway. So this isn't, because we are aware that, where's all this traffic going to? You have on the Miami Beach side. So a lot of the improvements that you see, that viaduct is only on the city of Miami side. It does not extend into the bay or to the beach. It's really to separate that traffic to address those pressing operational and safety needs of the corridor. And that's something that if you were just to provide, focus on the multimodal connectivity aspect, you would still not be addressing the needs that have been set forth by the department for this project.
Okay, so Mr. McIntosh, real quick, if Vanessa, you could unmute him. Do you have a follow-up question or comment? We're taking both. So when we do your question, again, because this is the equivalent of being an in-person public meeting, we will also record your comment in response, or you are welcome to email or submit a comment through our website at the end of the meeting if that's preferable.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time for answering my question. I understand some of it is limited to the scope, so no knock on any of the engineers on this, but it's a bit discouraging sometimes when we go to these government meetings and there's like so much different jurisdictions between the cities, the counties, and the state, and even the federal government. I was hoping, since this was the Department of Transportation, that it would cover all modes of transportation and not just the cars, because I don't know, it just seems like it would be so disconnected to be able to plan something like this. And I know you all already do like the work of coordinating a little bit, but if it's not even at this stage where there's the coordination between like the rail and the highways, so I don't know. It just seems like a contradiction. And if this isn't for increasing the capacity of the highway, I'm assuming these changes are being done for the current capacity. I would imagine a transit-only lane would reduce the capacity to the point where it would no longer be a problem for the kind of design issues where it's not able to handle the current capacity, but could handle a lower capacity.
So let me just be clear, and I apologize if we confused you, because we're called the Florida Department of Transportation and they're called the Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works. But let me just be clear. When we say coordinating, we don't literally just mean like, oh, we're telling them about our project and they're telling us about their project. No, we are literally working hand in hand all the way until we get to construction. And so absolutely 100%, as they develop their plans of their transit and other modes of transportation, that is put into both our models, our traffic studies, everything goes into that together. Additionally, that's going to change, as Robert said, significantly over the years. So as we proceed, we have a very methodical process that in order to receive federal funding, we have to follow the National Environmental Policy Act guidelines. So we will continue to do that, but that does not mean that we will not incorporate. The goal again is to look at one comprehensive solution. And just another clarification, the Florida DOT doesn't just look at cars, right? We're looking at bikes, we're looking at pedestrians, we're looking at nearby shuttles that we have in certain cities, we're looking at transit. And then of course, in a PD&E, we're looking at all kinds of other factors that weigh in. So, just to kind of pull out a little bit, what everyone is looking at here is two alternatives that will now continue to get modified with all the feedback that we're getting and with the continued coordination of all the agencies. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to Sam Behrens. And I believe we've already addressed this, but I do want to know, Robert, if you want to add anything else. Sam's question is, are there any alternatives being considered that don't involve double decking?
So in terms of the build alternatives, right now they both do involve double decking. In order to address as I said, in order to really separate the movement to address kind of the weaving and the queuing, and with such limited right-of-way, that really is one of the ways to avoid major impacts to the community. But I do say build alternative because, as you know, Alicia, as part of this process, the no build alternative remains a viable option throughout. And it's one that we have to demonstrate in terms of the selection of this build alternative, that it adequately addresses all the needs that have been set forth for the project. And that, of course, it minimizes or mitigates to the greatest extent possible impacts to the community. So while the build alternatives currently do have that feature, that's not to say that that's a guarantee, because again, we're still not at a point where we have a recommended option for this project.
Sorry, guys. So his follow-up question was the concept of induced demand taken into consideration? Oh, I just lost the question. So sorry. My screen just went blank. Okay, it's back. Sorry. Was the concept of induced demand taken into consideration with these alternatives? I'm guessing, Stefan, you want to go ahead and address that one for us?
Sure. So from an induced demand perspective, and just traffic forecasting overall, we utilize the Transportation Planning Organization adopted and approved transportation demand model, which is the Southeastern Regional Planning Model. This includes the Tri-County area of Miami-Dade County, Broward, and Palm Beach. And the way we evaluate this is we set a overall sub area of that model. So for us, our sub area of our project is essentially the entire project corridor, inclusive of areas to the south, as far south as we're, south of I-195, and all the way north, including portions of Golden Glades to capture express lanes traffic. And while we look at induced demand, really in this case, with the additional connections that we're looking at as the upper level viaduct and overall connections with the express lanes, it's more of a potential diversion that we are considering. There are some folks today that may choose to utilize the express lanes and then access Miami Beach through I-395 instead of through the general purpose lanes and then I-195. So we are looking at the I-395 corridor, any potential shifts in traffic that may occur. Overall, a lot of the demand and just overall activity is based on what's called traffic analysis zones and the interactions that occur between them. So as you update these models to reflect the number of lanes that you're showing, it acts a lot like, I guess a good analogy might be, maybe for some a good analogy, might be electricity. path of least resistance kind of approach. So if you were to increase the capacity and there is that demand on the other side, then really, you would see that increase in traffic as such. So from an induced demand perspective, we do look at what are those potential diversions that may occur from additional connections. And if we are providing additional capacity, which we're not on the causeway itself, you would see that potential increase in demand as well. So
So Vanessa, if you could unmute Mr. Behrens in the event that you have a follow-up question or comment, Mr. Behrens? Make sure he's still on here. Okay, I'm not seeing Mr. Behrens still, hold on.
He's listed, Alicia, but it appears that he's self-muted.
Oh, okay, because I wasn't seeing him
Oh,
on
hello,
my
can
end.
you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Mr.
Oh, yes.
Behrens.
Sorry about that. So thank you so much for those answers. I want to go back a little bit to Robert's answer earlier to Matthew that this is addressing operational capacity and safety concerns and not addressing, or I'm sorry, that it's looking at an operational and safety concern and not addressing capacity in this plan. But when I look at slide 13 on the presentation that you guys made about transportation demand, talking about the long-range transportation plan, it's saying that the county is expected to increase by 67%, employment by 38%, and that several existing capacity and operational deficiencies were identified, which are projected to be exacerbated in the future if no improvements are made. So the way I'm hearing it is this is somewhat of addressing a capacity issue, and it isn't solely just about safety improvements for the existing capacity. So that's sort of why I asked that question about induced demand, because we're familiar at this point with the fact that when you increase the capacity on these upper level viaducts, you're going to be, in my view, locking in generations now of car usage being the primary means of getting from Miami Beach to the mainland, and not actually addressing the long-term traffic concerns that are very much going to be real if this 67% population increase is realized. And so, in my view, I just feel that this might be a bit of an antiquated approach to traffic engineering. And obviously, I'm not the traffic engineer here, but this is feeling very much like a plan that we would have seen in a long time ago in the early days of the interstate highway system. And so I would just strongly encourage as much coordination that can happen as far as with Miami-Dade County Transportation Authority, as far as multimodal, and if there's a way to work a bus only lane into that future, or even potentially with the future talk about these different Metro Mover extensions and Bay Link and these potential build alternatives for that. How any of this could be worked in would be would have my strong support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Behrens. Robert or Stefan, I think,
Yeah.
Robert, you probably want to make a clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just to make sure my point got across correctly. On the causeway, we're not adding additional lanes into Miami Beach. So that transitions to the existing 3-lane section. Yes, in the city of Miami, just by the fact that we're adding additional lanes, right, in terms of providing for that viaduct and separating, there is additional capacity that's being provided. But in terms of trying to draw more traffic to Miami Beach, we're trying to keep that section restrained within our alternatives. But thank you for your follow-up.
Okay, and Stefan, I saw that you called up the slide 13 that Mr. Behrens referenced. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to pull it up for.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to move on now to Sebastian Ruiz, who has left, but I think it's important to address this. He would like both the engineers and Commissioner Higgins to be aware that he is concerned that the double decking might make seagrass impacts worse compared to a wider causeway. And so I'm wondering if our environmental expert, Caitlin Hill, would like to address that specific question. And I can read it again, Caitlin, if you want me to.
That's okay. I think I got it, though. Of course, please feel free to correct me if I get it wrong. But no, I actually, in this case for this project, the touchdown for the viaduct is before the crossing of the bay. So there would be less impacts than widening, because the additional widening might shade seagrass underneath it. This project, because the viaduct touches down before, it wouldn't actually have additional widening or seagrass impacts as a result of that.
Thank you. And can my team just verify, because mine is telling me that Mr. Ruiz has left. Are you showing, Paulette, are you showing Mr. Ruiz still here?
I am seeing him here.
Okay.
Yes, he is on the web.
Okay,
It looks like.
Okay, Vanessa, can you unmute him if he's there, and let me know, Mr. Ruiz, if you can unmute yourself as well, and if you'd like to respond or ask a follow-up question of our environmental expert?
Hi, no, thank you. That was a great explanation.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. I'm glad you are still on. I appreciate it. And then I'm going to go to Claudia, and I apologize if I say this wrong, but I'm going to try. Kusulas, I hope is not too far away. By far, you win some of the best questions I've ever read. So her comment says, this reminds me of the marching band in Animal House. Once all these new vehicles hit Miami Beach, then what? And I think, Robert, you started to address a little bit about that, but I don't know if you want to go further on that.
Hello.
I'm sorry, who's that?
I'm not sure who that was. I don't know.
Okay. If you go ahead, Robert, let's go ahead and answer. And then Vanessa can unmute Claudia.
No, again, just, yeah, it's a follow-up really to what I previously said. I mean, we're definitely very conscious of that, of the fact that you have very limited amount of right-of-way and opportunities on the city of Miami Beach side to be able to add capacity, which is why we're not adding capacity coming into to the beach. You know, there is, you know, the existing interchange with Alton Road, you know, and 41st Street, and obviously having Mount Sinai, one of the, you know, major traffic generator right within the interchange, is a big area of concern for us. And we're still working through alternatives and analysis on how best to move that traffic in and out of there and make sure that they have the emergency vehicle access, and that, you know, all the employees, which add a tremendous amount of traffic in both the AM and PM peak, that we can address that connectivity as well. So, I mean, those are legitimate concerns, and we are trying our best as part of this project to see what improvements can be done there with, as you know, as she mentioned, a very limited amount of space to do so.
And Claudia, if you could unmute yourself, if you have either a follow-up or a comment. Claudia, would you like to provide a follow-up? Can you hear us okay? And Vanessa, she's unmuted on our end?
No, she's self-muted, Alicia.
Okay, that's what I mean, yeah. If you could unmute, if you're interested in either a follow-up or a comment. If not, we will move on to the next question. Okay, so I actually neglected to mention this earlier, I think. I did skip a couple of your questions, Mr. McIntosh, just to give everybody an initial question, and then I will come back to you. But I do have a question real quick for Mr. Ruiz. This shadows and angles, I'm not sure if I'm seeing the right information here. Was that part of a previous question, or were you writing a follow-up?
Alicia, I'm not seeing Mr. Ruiz anymore.
Oh,
Online.
okay.
He may have dropped off.
Okay. Okay. If I could ask
No, no.
you, oh, is he back?
Yeah, it looks like he's back.
Okay.
Mr. Ruiz, are you there, sir?
Okay, we can certainly come back to Mr. Ruiz. I'm going to move on now to Wesley Saracini. And Wesley's comment, I'll read it again for the record, and then of course the questions. So he begins with, thank you for planning protected bike lanes. This is currently the only reliable way to get on and off the beach during peak hours. And his first question is, will there be protected dedicated bus lanes so buses can operate without interference, which I believe we have already addressed that. So I'll give you an opportunity, Mr. Saracini, when we move past that question in case you did not hear that answer earlier. Also, your next question is, which alternative provides the most flexibility for future above ground rail or metro mover across I-95? Slide 33 showed coordination with other important transportation projects. That is definitely a great question. Robert or Stefan, can one of you address that for him? And do you want me to read it again?
You're saying in terms of providing the greatest flexibility for a future rail
For a
line?
future rail line or metro mover. So in general, I would think it's whatever plans, you know, DTPW gets approved and done. I think what he's asking is, I'm assuming as he looks to kind of place his preference on the alternatives,
Sure.
is there one that is more flexible than another one? I guess is the right question for you to help us answer.
Sure. Well, in terms of the area before the causeway, as you know, there's very limited space of existing right-of-way beyond the existing interstate. So anything really there outside of the existing limits would be, it's not something that we'd be able to preserve because it's already outside the right-of-way. In terms of the causeway, I'd say likely the alternative, the option that has it just on one side, can free up one of the sides just for the provision of something like that in the future. Whereas, obviously, if you would now have these two facilities on both sides, you start, it starts restricting a little bit of that envelope on both versus just leaving one side fully available should something like that be feasible in the future.
And his last question is, and I think this is a Caitlin question, how did we evaluate the bird rookery at the I-95 interchange?
So as we're moving with these alternatives and moving forward, we're going to be conducting our more detailed analysis environmentally of both of these alternatives as we start coordinating with agencies. So for any bird-related impacts, we do go out, we do conduct species surveys. We're looking for any rookeries that are nearby our project area, as well as other state-listed, federally listed, or potentially listed species. So we will consider them, we document them as part of our natural resources evaluation, and then we do coordinate with Fish and Wildlife, and then the central office for DOT ends up making an effect determination for those species. But they do get considered, anything that's identified within the project, and is avoided and minimized to the greatest extent possible through coordination.
And having said that, now if Mr. Saracini, you could unmute yourself and let us know if we've addressed sufficiently your questions or if you have any follow-up questions or comments for us.
Hey, thank you for taking my question. Those were great answers, Robert. Thank you so much for addressing the Metro Mover or light rail question. I do think it's important just to maybe note which one of these alternatives is most friendly to future alternative transportation use cases so that people understand that when making these decisions or when reviewing these plans. Because I wouldn't have known that unless you said that, and certainly now my vote would be for the one that has the path on one side to unlock the future use case.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. That's good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, very good feedback for us. Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Frank, which I believe I got to read through it quickly. I think it's a comment, not a question, but let me double check real quick, guys. Give me a minute. Excellent. Yes, Frank, we appreciate that comment and it will absolutely be entered into the record. If you are, let me double check, you're still here. Yes, Mr., I hope I say this correctly, Mr. Janacek, I hope. Is there any additional comments or questions that we may address for you before we move on to the next speaker?
I don't have any. Thank you so much. It's just the commissioner outlined the concerns for bus riders and
Absolutely.
overall transit. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I hope that transit is taken into account in more so in these plans.
Absolutely.
As reducing traffic. Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. And we continue to hear that. And we are continuing, we actually made a matrix of every single comment that we have received from the public regarding all the transit questions, desires, advocacy for DTPW. And that's why you see, you know, really their top management here with us today. So we're really happy to have them here. And obviously the commissioner is a huge advocate for our SMART plan. We also work very closely with the Transportation Planning Organization, which you heard, which is also, you know, the master organization over not just us, but all of the transportation agencies and, of course, the SMART plan. So I'm going to just double check. Oh, and Matthew, I will be back to you. I do promise that. I want to make sure I get to any other question. Chris Garati, let me see if he's still here because it's telling me. Okay, so he, I believe, has left. You can tell me, Paulette, otherwise. But his question was to protect dedicated bus lanes from impatient drivers during congested traffic periods. Will there be measures such as installation of license plate cameras? And I think, Stefan, you can address a little bit what we do as part of our TSM&O alternatives as we get, or TMSM&O incorporated improvements throughout the project.
So as Robert mentioned there in the presentation, the transportation systems management and operations systems is really all of the technology that is being looked at to help improve the overall efficiency of not only the build improvements, but even the existing infrastructure. This corridor is already being managed with cameras, operators at the Regional Traffic Management Center, as well as you know, helping respond to incidents with road rangers and helping clear the lanes, reduce secondary crashes, and really trying to clear any crash events. There's also other devices to measure volume, speeds of the corridor, and really just try to make sure it's operating as efficiently as it can. So as we look now to the future, there's other connected vehicle components and other elements that will be evaluated as part of this project. And so from a license plate reader perspective, if it's like red light cameras, or I may have missed the first part of the question.
I think the first part of the question, sorry, Stefan, I misread it too. Basically is if we had dedicated bus lanes, how would you, you know, enforce, you know, traffic from getting in there? And of course we have those measures on, you know, similar projects that have some sort of, whether it's a dedicated express lane or whether it's a dedicated bus lane. So I think that obviously goes back to what we were saying earlier. So yes. So I
guess to answer that component of enforcement, that's where, you know, these are all the logistics operations that you do take into account. You look at how the current bus on shoulder systems are operating. What are those standard operating guidelines? So for example, you know, there's guidelines that are set forth with the overall operations for the project that's going to be coming online here now for the bus on shoulder, and evaluating those to see what is the best means of from an enforcement perspective. Definitely a concern, I think, for, you know, for everyone whenever implementing these optional use type facilities.
And just since Mr. Garati has left, for my team, if you could go back and transcribe the response so that we can email Mr. Garati tomorrow and make sure that he knows that we did address his question. We'll go ahead and do that for him. Please make sure that we complete the answer as it was given here today. Frank, I see you have some issues with our platform. We understand the platform is actually currently also undergoing other upgrades. And again, you know, we apologize definitely for the glitches. And as my team wrote, we are always, you know, passing on a lot of these platform issues to our central office at FGOT. And we apologize again for that specifically. We can also, if you're unable to come to our in-person meeting, we can also have an individual meeting with you so that there's no barrier whatsoever in speaking to our engineers. I'm gonna move on to David Butter. And David is asking us, if multimodal transportation is a priority, then why is this meeting about a double-decker highway? And I think I want to start by, again, reiterating, this meeting is not about a double-decker highway. This meeting is about looking at a myriad of problems, issues, safety, future of this corridor, and taking a look at every potential possibility and scenario where we could improve as much as possible. So we take these initial alternatives that the engineers have presented to you. We take all this feedback, we continue in constant coordination with our agencies, and we move towards a preferred alternative within the next year that is the compilation of all of that within our obvious existing guidelines. I don't know, Robert and Stefan, if you wanna, you know, address anything else, but, you know, multimodal transportation is always a priority, and that is why all the agencies are involved in this.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, I think you answered the overall question. And again, I would just add that in terms of that, the potential provision of viaduct, it really does facilitate also the connectivity with the express lanes that do not currently exist to Miami Beach. And with that connectivity to the express lanes, also with the 95 Express service that now provides that direct connection separated from all the those service interchanges that cause all that backup, where you can really have uninterrupted flow, making it that much more attractive from a user to go to utilize that bus express uninterruptedly to Miami Beach. So that facility, the provision of that viaduct facilitates that type of improvement, which of course would also benefit not only vehicular traffic, but from a multimodal perspective would also improve from the bus connectivity as well.
And if Mr. Butter would like to unmute now and ask any follow-up questions or provide any comments for our record.
Hey, I don't know who David Butter is. My name is Sarah Clark, and that was my question. I don't know.
David Butter. So thank you for clarifying it, Sarah. I don't know either.
Cool. All right. Well,
you clarified that.
The mystery. I guess I have an alter ego. Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of contradictory information right now. I'm hearing you guys say that this meeting isn't about a double-decker highway. I'm hearing you say that capacity expansion isn't something that's happening. I'm hearing you say that express lanes are multimodal. They're really not. And yet on you guys' website, under the goals of this project, increasing capacity is actually listed there in all caps. So I'm really not understanding what's going on here. And personally, I'm frustrated because I've gone to a lot of FDOT meetings where I'm ensured that public transit is a priority. And I understand that you guys have certain jurisdictions and that it's complicated, right? That you don't have power over everything. But I am so discouraged that in 2024, still in 2024, FDOT thinks that it's its job to move cars, not people. We need to be moving people, not cars. And a highway expansion is never a good idea. We're not just spending millions on a highway expansion. We are actually grandfathering in millions, maybe more, into maintenance costs for future generations. And for what? Where does it end? When do the highways stop expanding? So I'm just really here out of a place of frustration right now. It's not that I don't appreciate you guys. I do. I appreciate the work that you do. But I have to raise that mirror. I need you guys to zoom out and ask yourself, why are we moving cars? We need to be moving people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. And I think, let me just clarify, when I tell you that we're not here about a double-decker highway, what I mean is we're not just here about that. You know, we are looking at, you know, and we have looked at to get here many other options. I think Robert addressed earlier where there is a need to increase capacity versus where there is not a need or desire to increase capacity. So perhaps, you know, Robert, you can explain that again. It's possible Ms. Clark wasn't on when we discussed that. Definitely, again, I know it's frustrating, and I know that we have a lot of people out there who have a validated mistrust of government, but there is no doubt when we tell you that we are not just trying to move cars. We are trying to move people. We can only impact in this, you know, sort of what we put in here, where our partners are at in how they move people. I do also, though, want to clarify that the Department of Transportation, along with our partners at the county and the city, do look at the express lanes as a multimodal facility. And I will say, just because I've worked on those express lanes myself for many, many years, the amount of increased bus service and express bus service and amount of people we've been able to move in those express lanes from before what we had to what we have today is a really huge credit to the amount of people who really wanted that alternative within the express lanes. So, you know, we can differ on that, but you know, we show that as an incredible improvement as far as the amount of people that we're able to move daily. And that's actually something that has continued to increase and increase, and huge kudos to DTPW and Broward County Transit for basically continuing to provide us additional buses to be able to meet that demand. So I'm going to turn it over a second to our engineers, and I do want to confirm before I do that, what email do we have for Ms. Clark, since it is not, I'm not seeing it here, but maybe, yeah, I have a David J. Butter@gmail.com. So if you could put in this question box or in our chat your email, and of, you know, your name and maybe what area of the project you live in, that would help us tremendously. I don't know why it's marking up like that either, but Robert, Stefan, do you want to address anything further that Ms. Clark has brought to our attention?
No, I mean, I think Alicia, you did a better job than I would have explaining the benefit of the 95 Express, and then how part of what this project is doing is helping to enhance that connectivity of the express lane system. to 195 to be able to take even further advantage of the benefits of that 95 express system. So no, I mean, I think everything else we've discussed.
Thank you, though, Ms. Clark, very much. And we hope that as you go through our process, and we actually, this is kind of like what I call the baby phase of the project. Hopefully, as it continues to further develop and incorporate the Miami-Dade transit plans, it will look a little bit more like what we're talking about. I don't know if you heard why we do why we do have it as increased capacity, because we do have certain areas where we can, provide additional capacity, and we need to. Correct, Robert? Am I saying that correctly?
Correct. In terms of the area in the city of Miami where the viaduct is being proposed, obviously those are additional lanes that are adding capacity. But the main function of that is because we don't have the right of way to build horizontally in terms of collector distributor roads where you separate the traffic entering and exiting from the interstate, which actually one of the concepts does do that, which alternative one, and you can see the major right of way impacts associated with just a partial of that system. So in that area, yes, there's additional capacity, but in terms of trying to add additional capacity to the entire system, we are not, because we are restricting it on the causeway to Miami Beach. So yes, there is additional capacity on the city of Miami before you get to Biscayne Bay, but then that is kept, restricted for that reason. So I can understand how that's confusing, and also knowing that you're adding additional lanes, but really the main function in doing so is to separate through traffic from traffic entering and exiting the interstate system at Miami Avenue and at Biscayne Boulevard.
Thank you, Robert. The next person that I have here is Joe Wynn, which I know you emailed us, and we really appreciate that. So let me just ask his question. If the project is not solving a capacity problem, what is the purpose of new lanes, which I think you just addressed, Robert? Any added lanes will induce demand and create the same operational challenges, only worse due to more cars. I think, again, you have already addressed that, Robert, a few times, so I'm not sure if Mr. Wynn is still here. You are.
Alicia,
okay.
Alicia, I would just add, it's really in that same topic, those separation of movements, it's a serious safety improvement, it's a significant safety improvement. You're looking at a lot of different speed differentials between some of these lanes at times, and someone trying to get out of a line that may get stuck into a lane that's a little bit more open with higher speeds is, generates some high speed rear ends, side swipe crashes, and there is that driving element there to also, it's not just a separation of movement to make it flow better, but really helping eliminate a lot of those conflicts that occur throughout that section.
So, Mr. Wynn, if you'll unmute yourself and you want to ask any follow-up questions or just make a comment, obviously we will take this comment and put it into the record.
Yeah, I appreciate, your input. I appreciate what you've shared as well.
Of course.
That the whole thing on, on the capacity versus operational stability and safety, I appreciate, you clarifying. I'm familiar with 595's optimizations a number of years back, where they essentially reduced the speed conflicts by creating those separated on and off ramps and whatnot. So I understand that, for sure. However, I wanted to jump on the idea of safety from the sense that many of those severe injuries and incidents were pedestrian related, and those wouldn't be from speed differentials on interchanges. They'd be from intersections and other interactions and conflict points. And I didn't see any mention of essentially adding pedestrian refuges, curb bump outs, illuminated crossings, mid blocks, anything like that, that really, the things that actually will complement pedestrian access, daylighting along streets, all those different things, because people aren't walking on the highway. So that's not the safety problem that we have currently. So is there anything on that, or if I missed it, could you please assess that? Thank you.
Stefan, you wanna touch on that? 'Cause it's absolutely, it's a
Yeah.
valid point, but not something
Yeah,
that has not been considered. So maybe you can.
Definitely. I mean, with all of these alternatives, we are considering, the safety component of them. As we move into our alternatives and we're looking at the expressway system and shifting down also to the surface streets, that detail is really going to start to play in at the intersection level. What other enhancements can we do to address the safety, crash patterns that have been identified? As mentioned in the safety slide, over 8,000 crashes throughout the corridor. We're not just looking at I-195, we're looking at all those cross streets. Our overall influence area of study is, again, not just I-195, it's North Miami Avenue, Northwest 12th Avenue, Biscayne, Alton Road, and all of those cross streets. So we are looking at how can we improve that, how can we improve it from a safety perspective? For example, alternative 2, the west southbound to westbound flyover, taking all of that traffic out of the intersection will significantly reduce the amount of vehicles within that intersection that conflict with not just northbound traffic, but with pedestrians crossing Northeast 38th Street, where they don't get much of a break, really, if you're on the east side. So I have these open, right? It was loaded, but I guess it went to sleep. So, if you're on the east side here and you're crossing Northeast 38th Street, you don't catch much of a break between southbound left and northbound right traffic and access to the loop ramp. So you're really looking at getting that traffic out, and then seeing how the crosswalks, can be improved in terms of visibility, high emphasis crossings, push button locations that are maybe far out. So a lot of that detail, though, when we do get to the surface street, does come down as you start to refine the alternatives a bit more and really start developing those elements. And we are also, those are modifications that we also have to quantify in terms of overall improvement and potential reduction in crashes from different improvement elements.
Thank you, Stefan. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to Matthew Goltanoff, which I see one question here, but I also noticed you emailed me a second one. So I'm going to ask this one first and then go to my email a second and just see if I can read that one as well. Mr. Goltanoff's question is, has a cost benefit been conducted to determine the number of people anticipated to use the express lane connections from Miami Beach, and would their user fee tolls cover the costs of construction? And I know that I can begin to answer that the user fee tolls typically do not cover the cost of construction. The user fee tolls are collected by the state and reinvested into the system. But most definitely, I'm not sure that we would be discussing yet the number of people that would use the express lane connections. I can tell you that we have heard very positive feedback from Mount Sinai Medical Center, of course, and several other representatives and organizations in this area who, if you know the history of the express lanes on I-95, this was actually a big bone of contention for this community, that they did not have access to the express lanes here. So that's where that originally debuts from, and you heard the commissioner address that a little bit. I don't know, Robert and Stefan, if you have anything else. I know we're early on here. Is there anything else that we need to clarify while I look for Matthew's other question real quick?
We don't have that information yet in terms of the trip diversions, the specific numbers in terms of the viaduct or the upper level usage. That is something that will be part of the traffic report, or the systems interchange modification report. So definitely look out for that. I mean, we will have that information. I also want to clarify, right now, this is not being considered, this would not be an additional toll. I mean, the tolling associated with the express lanes, those would remain. Now, this is just providing additional connectivity to that system. So we would not be looking to add this as an additional toll to get onto the existing system. So I wanted to clarify that.
Correct. And Vanessa, if you could unmute Mr. Galtinoff, I have a clarification I need him to make regarding the other email that he sent me. I know you participated in our previous meetings, but I do need you for the record to help us clarify. Robert and Stefan, he wanted a little more information about the connection to Mount Sinai specifically. And I'm just wondering, Matthew, if you can give us a little bit more explanation, because I know we went over some of this in our last meeting, but if you could let us know, unmute yourself to let us know how we can address that further for you. It might actually benefit the other folks on the call.
Okay, great, thank you. And thank you, Alicia and the other folks, for addressing the question that I had about the express lanes, because I do know that a number of members of the community on Miami Beach have expressed interest in the express lanes, but knowing that money is not unlimited, you know, I think it does, sorry to use that pun, but beg the question, you know, is it worth that allocation of resources, perhaps? And again, I guess, you know, we're so early in the process that we don't have the answer to that. With respect to Mount Sinai, I sent you that email. We didn't necessarily have to go over it right now, but last time we talked about would there be a direct connection between the proposed bus lanes on Shoulder and the Mount Sinai Medical Center, seeing that it is one of the larger employments on Miami Beach. And I know the answer was no. I did want to circle back with you, though, if there's any data that you perhaps have on modes that are used by employers and by visitors and patients, what the times of day are, just not just the peak AM or PM, but since it's a 24-hour facility, perhaps there's other non-traditional times as well. Just trying to get an understanding on how this information, their expansion, whether or not maybe they have internal employment surveys on transportation methods, and how this could all be factored into this particular project.
Robert, I think
again,
before you go ahead.
You think it's helpful?
No, I do because I think it, you know, every time we answer one of these questions, I hope it triggers other people to think about either follow-up questions or things that maybe they didn't know about the constraints that we're dealing with. But I just want to clarify, I think the question originally was if we could provide the connection directly into Mount Sinai. And, you know, typically we do not create, I mean, it's a much more formal answer than what I'm about to give you. The engineers can correct me, and they're probably cringing at me trying to explain it. But in a nutshell, we are not able to, you know, typically go straight into what we would consider a private property. However, we are working very closely with Mount Sinai on their master plan, and additionally with the Department of Transportation and Public Works. We actually have received a ton of their data and information, not just from their master plan, but specifically how are their employees getting to and from work. And one of the things that was really interesting was also the diversion of ambulances and rescue from Jackson to Mount Sinai. So that was a really additional set of information that we received. So I just want to clarify your question. I think your question is more, you know, could a bus potentially go on the highway and into Mount Sinai? Or is your question more about the highway directly, you know, having the exit into Mount Sinai? I just want to clarify, and if Robert and Stefan, you clearly understand his question better than me, then please go ahead and proceed.
Yeah, so from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll let you follow. But yeah, I mean, I think I understood Matthew's question in terms of, yeah, you have that bus on shoulders. Is there an opportunity for some type of direct connection to what likely is obviously to be a big user of it because, you know, of their large employment base? While again, and correct, currently under FHWA guidelines, that direct connection is not allowed in terms of policy. You know, there's still going to be some ongoing negotiation to see what, if anything, can be done. But right now, just according to policy, that is not possible from an interstate system. But there are some other enhancements that we're trying to do to take advantage of that bus on shoulders. And maybe Stefan, I'll let you add to that.
Yes, yeah. So from the bus on shoulder perspective, you know, it does. We do take the overall widening of that shoulder and that full lane size shoulder to the turn lane with 41st Street. So, you know, already, you know, when you do see some backups that occur on 41st Street as you get into Miami Beach, you know, there is that opportunity to bypass most of that congestion and really lead into the eastbound left turn lane, which access through Alton Road, 43rd Street into Mount Sinai itself. So that is not a direct connect, but as Robert mentioned, you know, from the FHWA policy points on interchange access, and just when you perform these requests to the federal level, there are restrictions related to the direct access to private. So as mentioned, it's not that there's not anything being looked at, but it's just that there is that restriction. From a time of day perspective, you know, we do see a lot of the traffic and generation with kind of your typical hospital shift changes that occur, you know, every 12 hours. So it's a little earlier than your regular AM peak hour that it has an uptick, and then it's a little bit later in terms of the PM peak hour. So we do see a significant amount of traffic getting off Alton Road that does go into Mount Sinai. And so those are a lot of the movements that we're also looking at, you know, trying to help facilitate. We understand, you know, the conflict from operational conflict between northbound left and southbound movement in the AM peak hour. So these are things that that we are trying to enhance. So from the bus on shoulder perspective, all the routes currently go through either this left turn or continue straight onto 41st Street. And so, you know, they have the ability to get all the way, you know, up there.
Thank you, Stefan. Mr. Goltanoff, did that help address your question so we can move on? I don't want to move past you if that didn't.
No, that's great, Alicia, and
Okay.
the rest. Thank you so much.
Of course, absolutely. On our next comment, is that, I apologize, because I'm only seeing C. Miller. Let me just make sure. Yes, so I'm not sure what your first name is, but I am going to read your comment and then you can let me know when we unmute you. Okay, so most of this is yes, okay. Agree with not widening. This is excellent. Thank you. These are exactly the type of comments that we want to enter into the record. Okay, excellent. I'm reading through it quickly just to see that there's no question. Okay, there is something that we can address towards the end of this comment. It says, lastly, I would hope that the beautiful character of the 195 entry to the beach will be retained. Often capacity expansions eliminate trees and green spaces, which of course provide character. Caitlin, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we are not only trying to preserve but enhance in this project?
I mean, I could talk all day about preserving everything environmental, but I think it's probably Robert who could comment more on like the concerns that he's specifically talking about from like an aesthetics perspective.
No, we understand the importance of kind of that landmark feature to the beach, and so we are very much aware of that. We do have a landscape architect as part of our team to looking at opportunities to how we can, find areas along the corridor to enhance, and definitely we still don't know what, if any, impacts will take place in that area, because we do need to accommodate for, some improved drainage as well. But I can assure you that anything of that nature would be coordinated, and any impacts, I'm sure, will be reworked to make sure that the overall feature is maintained, and as best we can as part of this project, enhance it as well. So, I mean, there are no plans to, severely impact. Again, we don't have specifics at this point. But that is a resource that we're cognizant to avoid. And if there are any potential impacts, we would be looking to mitigate and somehow, add to it in some other capacity. So it's a great point, and something that we are aware of, and we appreciate the comment.
And if Vanessa, if we could unmute C. Miller, and we could just confirm that we've addressed that. I see that yours was mostly a comment, but you're absolutely welcome to do a follow-up question with us if you need. You'll have to unmute yourself as well. Okay, we will come back to you if you have any additional comments. Let me double check that I don't have any new people that I have not addressed, and then I'll go back to, okay, great. So let me go back up to the top here and see, I think Mr. McIntosh had some additional questions. Hold on. And Vanessa and Paulette, as I go through this second round, if I'm missing anybody, please interrupt me, but I'm trying to go back to folks that had additional questions. So the next question I have from Mr. McIntosh was, what would be the CO2 impact from increasing the capacity of the highway for vehicles?
Mr. Font, do you want to talk a little bit about, in terms of what's required from an air standpoint, and in terms of measures of effectiveness that some of the micro simulation models output?
Yes. So in general, Florida is what's considered to be an attainment from an air quality perspective, meaning good air quality. So while an air quality memorandum and full analysis is not required, when you do perform these, a lot of the time, improving operations shows a significant improvement in overall air quality and emissions versus gridlock. So even though traffic may be increasing, the improvement in operations and overall efficiency tend to reduce those overall emissions. Furthermore, the microsimulation does provide emissions estimates, and so we will have those in our analysis. But yeah, so that is one of the one of the key ways to look at it. And again, when you do perform some of these air quality assessments, you're looking at the worst case scenarios. So you're looking at the worst case build and worst case no build as well into consideration. So seeing how air quality goes from existent to no build without improvements and build with improvements. So just from experience in performing those analyses, you do see just efficient operations plays such a huge role in improving air quality as a whole.
And let me give an opportunity, Mr. McIntosh, if you would like a follow-up or an additional question with your question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, for the follow-up, so you're saying from increasing so with these modifications to the roadways, to the causeway, you're saying because the cars will be able to move through it faster, that it'll improve the air quality?
Faster may not be the appropriate word in this case. I would say more efficiently versus when you're in, just standing idle and taking longer there. But our micro simulations, there is an emissions model within it that provides estimates. And so, we are looking to summarize those estimates as we complete the evaluations of each alternative in order to see what that comparison does look like.
Thank you, Stefan. I apologize, Mr. Goldstein mentioned I skipped over him, so let me see where his question fell off and just make sure. There it is. I am so sorry. Mr. Goldstein, his question is, can you consider an alternative, the option to leave space in the viaduct unused by cars so that the county can go in later and fill it in with a potential Metro mover or Metro rail line? If not, I believe the no build alternative is preferable due to induced demand concerns. Stefan, would you like to address that for Mr. Goldstein?
I saw you, Robert. I'm not sure if you want to answer. Robert kind of covered on, and I think one of the previous questions is the potential footprints of which one is more conducive. I think when we are looking at that, it is which one may be more suitable, and I think it's looking at the network as a whole as to what are the overall plans of the smart plan and where are those connections possibly occurring. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Robert. I think the viaduct, that's one of the key areas from the bus on shoulder connections with the Golden Glades and everything that we kind of talked about.
You're definitely limited in space. If you are to provide a viaduct as it's currently shown, you would have limited room to do something else. And technically you could always go more vertical, as you can see the height of the viaduct that they're doing on the 836 side. You're going over the river and et cetera. You technically could go more vertical. You could provide opportunities for perhaps some small envelope from a pier placement standpoint, but you are really constrained again with how much space you have horizontally to be able to provide the lanes, the vehicular lanes, and then in the same elevation provide for some type of mass transit. But again, whether there's then an opportunity to drop columns similar, offset from where the viaduct columns are in the future, and try to go something even more vertical. That's something that would have to be looked at in further study. Definitely, that's an additional cost and an additional conflicts when you're looking to try to accommodate all those three within a limited corridor. And in terms of any other option on the surface street network from an elevated system that could then connect, whether that's 36th Street or any other corridor, that's something that we're evaluating as part of this study.
Yeah, and I just pulled up, I think, this coordination slide. I think it's important to show that we're looking at all of these potential connections and where they're coming in and what conflicts or opportunities, are occurring with it, throughout the project area.
And
Mr.
Alicia,
Gold?
just to clarify in terms of, and I don't know, if there's anybody even from a Miami-Dade County standpoint, I know that from a heavy rail standpoint, 395, I guess, is currently the corridor, and that there is no consideration at this point or any future plans for anything along the 195 corridor. And I do, again, I understand that plans change, so I don't want to just say, hey, there's not a plan. So I completely understand that. But again, given the extremely narrow or restricted right-of-way in the city of Miami spot, it's going to be hard to leave some type of envelope for a future, even within what's out there today. Again, as we discussed earlier, I think that's a different issue over the causeway. For a significant portion of this project, there is that opportunity. But again, there are north-south, as Stefan mentioned, corridors that are looking along Miami Avenue, and what that can look like from a station standpoint to then get across the causeway. That's definitely beyond the scope of this project, but I think there are opportunities should the vision change to try to accommodate that in the future.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to add to that is that, as Commissioner Higgins mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts right now, not just on the SMART plan, but on all the applications that have been submitted to the federal government for the expansion of Metro Rail, Metro Mover, and then of course our bus system in general. So we will continue to get that information on a very regular basis from both DTPW and the TPO. And so as a result, we will work together very closely on, whatever plans. We know that they're constantly looking at improving their system. And so as we get any additional information or funding, like, Commissioner Higgins mentioned that the Northeast Corridor is now advancing. Obviously, that was a great development. Mr. Goldstein, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and either do a follow-up or just give us a comment, or did we address your question and concern? Thank you for being so patient and for emailing me that I had skipped over you. I am very sorry. I guarantee you it was not intentional.
No, it's all good. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yes. Well, so I wanted to start by saying thank you guys. I know that this meeting is probably going on quite a bit longer than you guys hoped for. And I also did send an email before the meeting even started. I think Alicia actually answered that very, very quickly. So I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing and the time that you're spending talking to us. I did have a couple of thoughts kind of related to other people's questions that I did across. The first was I heard an explanation of induced demand previously that I think was that personally I think was incorrect, because induced demand, it's a theory of economics that says that when a good or service gets cheaper or better, that people are going to be using it more often, basically, or buying more of it. And for cars, it's, you can add lanes, so adding capacity. If you make operational improvements that improve the flow of cars, like all this stuff is making the experience of driving better. So more people are going to drive, even if you're not adding more lanes. But this project is adding lanes, at least on the mainland side. And it's making these operational improvements that I think will induce more car traffic, and it's going to very quickly meet that capacity that you guys are trying to avoid. And the other thing is that maybe those of us who are in the call and not FDOT engineers, maybe we're misunderstanding what you guys mean by you're coordinating with your other partners, like the transit agencies, because, okay, the scope of this project isn't to build transit, and I understand that. But then you say that you're working with all these transit companies, transit agencies, that are building transit and are doing that work, and you can't coordinate on the build out of this project. It's a little weird hearing that from my end, because I'm seeing it in other projects. In I-4, I believe, from Orlando to Tampa, they're leaving space in the middle for Brightline to go in. When 595 was expanded, they left space in the middle for a potential transit corridor. Of course, it never got built, right? Because FDOT ended up building express lanes in that median where transit was intended to go in 595. So I'm just wondering, why? I understand there's spatial, like you just don't have the space to do it in certain parts of it. But maybe you can go back and as an alternative say, hey, we're building the viaduct anyways. That's part of this project. We're building the viaduct. why can't we leave space so that if Miami-Dade County wanted to, they could add a mass transit option like Metro Move or Metro Rail between the mainland and the island. And I know that MacArthur Causeway is the place that's being looked at right now, which is I-395, I think. But there's no reason that we can't have two mass transit options going into Miami Beach. I mean, you have people in Mid Beach that are not going to walk to the Bay Link project going on in South Beach. Like, there's no harm in having two different mass transit lines going to Miami Beach. So I don't know how far along you are, if you can go back and look at more alternatives, but I would really appreciate it if you did. And I think that, you know, hearing all these other people's comments, I think that that's the main point of concern here. Thank you, guys.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because you've mentioned a lot of projects that I personally worked on, so I can help you understand some of that. But let me start by apologizing. You know, we work in a world of trying to do a lot of plain languaging and clarifying what we do, and sometimes it's so you know, rudimentary for us that we don't clarify. So to be clear, when we say we are coordinating, we are literally showing, we're studying, you know, this project from here to here, right? Point A to point B. We immediately get from our partners, what are you studying or looking at implementing in this corridor, right? If there are plans to implement, if there is a desire to implement, that can be, and again, my engineers will help me determine what's the threshold to go ahead and leave those envelopes, okay? You are correct. We have left those envelopes many times. In fact, 595 is a great example of how that envelope was actually left for transit, and the agreement between Broward County Transit and FDOT was to do the reversible lanes and carry transit through the first ever reversible express lanes due to the demand of the traffic being very split east and west, which is, you know, different obviously than what we have here. So we also have cases, for example, on the Palmetto Expressway, where, you know, we had HOV lanes and we turned those into express lanes, and those are being looked at as well for, you know, development. So I hope I'm being, you know, we're being as clear and as transparent as we can. Coordination means exactly that. You know, we're sitting down and, you know, sharing what our, you know, what we call our purpose and need for this project, which is, you know, included in our fact sheets. It's included in everything that we have. It's what guides the need to look at this corridor and improve it. And the, you know, DTPW is, you know, constantly sharing with us what their plans are specifically for this corridor. So again, I don't know if you were on before, but you know, we continue to take all the transit requests and comments and take them to DTPW. We are scheduled to meet with them again. We will continue to meet with them throughout the entire project. So I want to make sure you understand that doesn't mean, you know, that we don't, like, that we preclude them if they don't have plans for whatever their plans are. And I hope I didn't just confuse you even more, but most of the time when this happens, just my experience, 595, I-95, 395, I-75, those are all projects I worked on from day one into construction. And a lot of times we are told to leave an envelope, and we do that, but as we get closer to construction, either the agency has been able to acquire the funds and the permits, et cetera, to make it what we were discussing, or we have to come up with another solution, or there is enough viability to leave that space. Obviously, no one wants to, you know, drive on an expressway that, or any roadway that just has an empty space without some sort of justification. So I'm sure my engineers can give a better threshold for how we determine those envelopes, because I know Robert Linares, for example, was, the lead engineer and is still working on 395 and many of the projects I mentioned. So if you want to, maybe you or Stefan further explain that. And then you guys can definitely do the induced demand question. That is not a public involvement question.
No, I mean, in terms of the coordination, Alicia, I mean, I think you did a great job of kind of walking through what that looks like. And along those lines, which is what we were referring to, currently there are future plans, right? Miami-Dade Transit future plans does not have that type of facility along 195. So in terms of, I wouldn't say even a threshold. I mean, if there were conversations or discussions of a desire, then obviously that would be something that the department would have to make a decision with Miami-Dade Transit. Is this something that is feasible at whatever cost that is? And so I wouldn't say that there's a specific threshold that would be look like, but it would have to start with a vision or a plan from the transit agency that's saying, hey, we see a potential future here for this. How can you guys partner with us in facilitating that? But without that, we're just trying to do the best we can with what their plan currently is, which is for that bus express rapid transit. So how can we facilitate that as best as possible? And we've received some really good feedback in terms of enhancements that they, that interested parties would want to see, and that's something that we could absolutely look at. But in terms of this envelope, I think the transit agency would really have to lead the way in terms of saying, hey, we really want to look at this corridor for that type of usage to see, okay, then department, what can you do to help facilitate that? And we have not seen or heard that that's under consideration at this time.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I agree with you. We have only heard and seen, and I've been doing this for 30 years, a connection of potential transit to the beach at the southern end. I cannot remember a time,
Heavy
when
rail,
we had seen
from a rail standpoint. I mean,
heavy rail. Yes,
yeah.
heavy rail. Of course, that's he was referring to the Bay Link and So, but definitely the DTPW has their existing bus service, all of which is under consideration as we look at this. And they are constantly trying to expand their system, as I said. And that's unfortunately, I was just looking to see, but I think several of them have come off the call already. I do know that some of the folks in the city of Miami Beach are on the call. So if any of you guys have any other, sort of feedback that DTPW has given you that we have not received, we can, go ahead and share, please, by all means, let us know and we'll go ahead and unmute you as well. Okay, so let me go back to the top. And okay, I'm going to do, if everyone will just be patient with me, I'm going to make sure line by line from the very beginning that I have gotten. I know I have a couple of follow-up questions that have been put here. So let's see. Okay, Mr. Goltanov's email we answered. If you could adjust that, Vanessa. We did address the question about the express lanes. Oh, okay. Mr. Jasinek has left, but just, I mean, this is probably a question of interest to those of you that are still here. His question is that most cities have or are removing their double-decker express roads, especially those near the downtown. I guess the bigger question is, why is Miami building one? I'm not familiar with how many folks are bringing down their express lanes, but and I don't know, Robert, if you or Stefan are, but I think you have already explained, why we need to look at a double decker, and I'm not really sure if he's talking about the express or he's just talking about how we separate traffic in the, when we double deck a road. I don't know if you want to give any further explanation, and then my team can follow up with him on that.
I mean, without knowing exactly, I mean, it does sound, and I know there even, in terms of the general sentiment from what I heard, not even so much as why you're, double decking, but why are you putting more elevated structures versus removing the expressway system? Because this really isn't adding, additional impacts. It's actually trying to improve the pedestrian experience by eliminating some of that traffic at the intersections and connecting it onto the interstate versus circulating at the surface street, which is causing even more friction. In terms, there have been movements in certain cities to take down expressways and to do them like as boulevards, et cetera. And, there was many years ago, that was something that was discussed for 395. But given that this is a critical evacuation component for Miami Beach, and the amount of traffic and the amount of residents and commercial uses that it provides, not only here for the city of Miami, for Miami Beach, that's not something that I think and would be considered from an interstate standpoint to be taking down the interstate. I mean, I think it serves, I think just from an operational and safety standpoint, to now have those 100,000 plus vehicles at the surface street through this area going to Miami Beach is not something that's under consideration.
Yeah, and I think since Frank has left, if one of the members of my team can just jot down that question, we can actually email him, Robert, with our response and maybe ask for a little more clarification on what he was looking for. I have another question from C. Miller, which is there federal money from the infrastructure bill tied to this project? And then I'll save the second one since it's a completely different question.
So as you know, right now, this project is not funded for construction. I mean, we're going through the federal process because you do require federal approval because it is an interstate, and as well as you want to be eligible for federal dollars. But the bigger point, it is an interstate system. Right now, the project, since there's not a recommended option or exact scope in terms of what that next phase would look like, so it's not, right now, it's not currently funded, but I would envision that when it does, it would absolutely be tapping into not only state dollars, but likely federal dollars. I would imagine, just given the scope and magnitude of the project, but that's still undetermined. I would also say that because this is like what they can call a mega project or a major project, there is a financial plan that needs to be prepared as part of this project, and that will further detail what that funding picture could potentially look like in the future.
And I think just to readdress the first part of the question, the answer is no. The infrastructure bill is not tied to this project. The PD&E is funded by the Florida Department of Transportation to prepare the future versions of the project for potential federal funding or any type of funding plan as we get closer. The second question is, where will transit stops be incorporated into the design? And unfortunately, this team cannot answer that for you. Basically, as we've mentioned before, the Department of Transportation and Public Works at the county would be providing us their stops and their plan as of today. And as we get, closer and we go up to the design level, they would again continue to provide that for us. And again, a lot of what they have to look at as far as their transit stops is, of course, their demand and what would the potential changes to our, that the department make to their stops. I don't know, Robert, if you want to add to that or if you think we answered that.
Stefan, I'm sorry, because Stefan said he had something to add to that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stefan. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just wanted to share that on the concept roll plots, we did identify some of the key existing transit stops that are within some of the key intersections, and if we were to impact those, then obviously we'll make that coordination and see where those transit stops may need to be relocated, or if we see from a safety perspective, a far side bus stop versus near side and anything that may benefit, we'll make those recommendations as well. But you can see on the concept roll plots some of the key existing stops that are there.
And just to give an opportunity again, because I don't think we were able to hear from C. Miller earlier, would you like to unmute yourself and add any or request any clarification or add any comment?
No, this has just been a fantastic meeting. I have to.
We're happy to hear that.
Thank you. I think that the certain themes have come through loud and clear about, wanting a dedicated BRT or, rail, something being included into the vision planning. And I guess like rehumanizing the future to the extent that we can. So I just would echo, I think there were so many excellent points brought up that you guys have addressed very directly. I do think that the location of the bus on the breakdown lane, I understand that there was a response that said, well, it's just safer that way. And I just wonder if that could be studied a little more intensely to see, maybe in some places it could be more centralized and maybe there could be additional stops, because the transit that does exist in the county, like there's a lot of, endpoint connection issues. And I would hope that I understand this has not yet been funded. And, I know that there is like now this huge pool of federal money out there, but I just hope that some of the effort can go into making the future transit as connected as possible to other modes, so that you're not just getting on the bus and going somewhere, but you can actually, connect from bus to rail or to, I don't know what else, you'd want to do specifically for people who really can't drive and in fact can't bike. I'm a huge proponent of the bicycling, but there's a lot of people who don't have the capabilities to do that. So having a really functional transit system, especially for, the people who are commuting daily to and from the beach, I think is, really should be overarching all of this. The one other thing I've been noticing, and it was not in my comment previously, but there's a lot of merging that's happening in what is being designed with the Signature Bridge right now. Meaning, you come on into a curved lane and then that lane just ends. And I've been seeing this in like almost all of the new highway construction that I've driven on in the past couple of years, which is that it seems to be like, I don't know whether it's computer modeling or what it is, but when a lane just ends, especially on a curve, I think drivers freeze up. And randomly, I was watching a study talking about how, human slowing up and then taking their foot off the brakes and then slowing up again. That's what causes a lot of traffic, is actually, humans don't drive at a consistent speed. They get hesitant and then they accelerate. And so there was a study about putting, driverless cars on to kind of regulate traffic flow. And, there was a talk about operation. I feel like that maybe that would help some of our traffic. But the merging, I think, exacerbates this human tendency to freeze up. And I'm not saying no merges, but it seems like it's like a merging free-for-all where like the left lane, which is just recently constructed, you get up to pass a car and then the lane ends. And getting on 395 now with the new construction, I don't know if it's temporary or permanent, but you're kind of on this sinewy path and then your lane just ends. And I think that it causes additional congestion because drivers are constantly like not knowing what's going on. And so it causes a lot of the stop and start that makes the traffic patterns even worse. So that's just an aside that when this is actually designed, if that might be noted, that would be That would be helpful.
Well, thank you so much. I do want to say that as much as you guys thank us for still being here, we thank you. We know it's a long night after dinner or before dinner or after work. And honestly, these comments make a huge difference for us. And so we actually commend you for sticking all this out in this particular format. And we really appreciate those comments. I know that, yes, a lot of what you're seeing on 395 are definitely temporary conditions. And I know Robert has spent most of his career and Stefan working on projects that do exactly that, which is correct those types of weaving and merges and things that are not only dangerous, but not at all preferred. So I don't know, Robert, if you want to just hit that a little bit. I think that it's a very viable comment, especially if you were here, you know, before we rebuilt Palmetto Expressway or before we rebuilt 826, 836. So I'm just wondering if you want to address some of her comments.
No, I mean, I would echo them and agree that that's always conditions that that you're looking to improve on. And that, yes, I would likely anything that you're experiencing, I'm sure on 395 right now is temporary in nature, and it's just part of how they have to sequence the construction and what they need to do to be able to build and maintain the traffic at the same time. But yes, I mean, we try, you know, some areas of course are unavoidable, and you try to, when you do have merge, that you provide as long a distance as possible to make sure that you account for those differential speeds. But you know, thank you for the comment, and as part of what we're trying to do here, there are some conditions like that as you're approaching Miami Beach. So we're trying to improve on how the splits are to make sure that traffic is properly distributed. So your point is well taken, and something that will be incorporated into this project.
Thank you, Robert. I do see we have a new a question from a new resident, and that's Andres Corrales. So I'm going to take that question before I go back to some of the other questions. So Mr. Corrales writes his comment, and then he says, have you considered double decking to provide other modes of transportations instead of more lanes for cars? I just want to confirm, Mr. Corrales, I'm not sure how long you have been on our call, but we've addressed that a few times. Were you able to hear that earlier, or do you need us to answer that again? You can go ahead and unmute now, and we'd be happy to help you. Mr. Corrales, would you be able to unmute yourself and see if you've received the answer to that from our previous responses?
Yeah, I
Nope,
recently
there he
got
is.
on.
Okay.
So if you could just say, just give me a quick summary, please.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I think the bulk of your question is really about whether or not the double decking addresses anything other than cars, right? And the short answer, and again, I'll let my guys tune in if they, or jump in if they want to explain it different, but the short answer is yes. Those all types of transportation modes are evaluated in all of our improvements. We do have to work within what transit or long range planning routes are in as it relates to either buses, rail, or, you know, light rail, or any form of transportation other than vehicular. So I think that the short answer is yes, absolutely. And we'll look very, you know, strongly at our partners to let us know how their plans continue to develop, that we could then incorporate any of what they're looking at into our plans. And again, you know, that is a constant coordination with them. I don't know, Robert, Mr. Corrales wasn't on earlier, if there's anything else that you want to add about that.
No, I mean, I think, again, I think you answered it correctly, that provides opportunities to, in keeping with Miami-Dade County's vision for that BRT, to facilitate that connectivity with the express lanes. And again, the double decking is just a small, portion of this job from just west of Miami Avenue to Biscayne Bay. And there's all these other, elements of the project beyond that in terms of the multimodal connectivity between Miami and Miami Beach through the, through the potential provision of a new shared use path, as well as obviously, yes, all the safety improvements, which the bulk of those crashes are vehicular. Of the 8,000 crashes over a 5-year period, the overwhelming number of that are vehicular crashes, and that is a direct result of the poor operating, conditions and speed differentials that currently are associated with this facility. And so that, that viaduct looks to improve that for all users.
And I think the other thing that I just want to add is, and I apologize that I didn't mention this sooner, but we really want to look at the entire project. The minute the department starts to look at improving this entire, corridor, there is a multitude of types of improvements that basically get to be improved, right? So everything from our bicycle facilities, our pedestrian facilities, our roadways, our potential transit connections, our environmental quality improvements. So all of that comes with this project. And, as you may or may not have heard Robert say before, some of these parts of this project you're going to love and others you're not going to like as much. And so the more we hear back from you, the more we can kind of find the happy medium that, meets all of our requirements and our standards and also addresses all of the community's concerns. Also, in case you didn't hear it, Mr. Corrales, I also am providing all the comments in an upcoming meeting, again, our follow-up meeting with DTPW, and they were on the call earlier today. Their management was on just to, again, continue to support us as we move forward in this project. Oh, okay, hold on. We checked off another question by Ms. Miller, but we did not address this. Caitlin, are there wildlife or other crossings being considered for the causeway? Also, are there possibilities for linear parks along the edges of the causeway, as in Rickenbacker? Is there any discussion of this? Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Yes, so there's a couple different things there. As far as wildlife crossings go in an urban area, there isn't a formal wildlife crossing being made, meaning that a wildlife crossing is connecting green spaces across areas to get them under and around transit. So there are some existing green space areas, including the Albert Pollett Park that's on the Miami side. But as far as a formal wildlife crossing in an urban area, no, that's not something that's really being considered for this, just because of the existing environments and these conditions. But for the second part of your question, where you're talking about, pedestrian access and linear park resources that could be included, part of what we are looking at, depending on which alternative, or depending on the alternative refinement process, we're coordinating with resiliency agencies. We're looking at sea level rise modeling and projections for the Causeway Island to see how much of the island, after the alternative that's refined is planned and mapped for this. We can look at how much land is left to develop green spaces or areas where people might be able to use them. However, part of this is this island is informally used illegally. Currently, if you're in the area, you know how often people are out there. Because it's a limited access right of way, technically people should be separated from traffic that's moving at this speed. So our pedestrian path has to have those like safety aspects of it, or the shared use path, to maintain it. And then we would have to coordinate with different groups to see if there could be some other green spaces or type of projects that we could design that wouldn't get just washed out if they're below the mean high water line.
And Ms. Miller, would you like to unmute and follow up any question or comment for Caitlin?
No, that was a great answer. I was also considering, I said wildlife, but I was considering human crossings as well. But I know it is like a tricky spot. I just would hope that it doesn't, there's actually a lot of like mangroves and other things. It's like the shoreline there actually is pretty cool from the water. So I know she's already talked about that and the seagrasses and everything else. So I just, it's a pretty cool space that the highway actually has.
Beautiful.
So she gave a great answer, I thought.
Yeah. Caitlin, did you have a quick follow-up to her or no?
No, I wanted to acknowledge that she's right, that I didn't specifically mention it, but yes, there are mangroves there, especially in that southeast corner. There's actually an old mitigation area from DOT where they've created part of a living shoreline already for mangroves. And yes, I agree, they're awesome.
I'm gonna get back to Mr. McIntosh, which I hope is still here with us. Let's see. Yes. Okay, great. Mr. McIntosh put in our quote in our question box that Estefan, the question regarding the increasing capacity as stated on the website was not answered. I know we did specifically answer that to why we talked about it. So I don't know, since that was about 30 minutes ago, Mr. McIntosh, did you hear that answer that was given earlier by Robert? Or do you need us to clarify that again?
I think my clarification, so how it reads on the website, it says the purpose of this project is to build upon the CPS efforts and evaluate alternatives that address operational deficiencies, relieve existing and future congestion, accommodate future travel demand projected as a result of area-wide population and employment growth along the I-195 corridor. And with the increased capacity goal, it further mentions the population of Miami-Dade County as a whole is expected to increase by 67% in 2045, and county-wide employment is expected to increase by 38%. The project is anticipated to meet the mobility needs of the area by alleviating current and future congestion on the corridor. So I guess my question is would you say the goal then isn't to increase vehicular capacity, but overall capacity, or is it for increasing vehicular capacity?
Well, I think let's take a step back. The goal is multifaceted. So you'll see a lot of different things that we need to and want to accomplish in order to bring these roads up to standard, safety, environmentally more beneficial, et cetera, right? So I just want to clarify, not to hinge on one of the, objectives or goals, right? We have certain areas that obviously you want to benefit capacity, and you have other areas that you're benefiting, maybe other priorities. But the bottom line is, across the entire corridor from point A to point B and all of the items that go through that, we address all kinds of users, right? We address, our bicyclists, our pedestrians, our cars, and then of course, whatever transit plans, future or present, are in this particular corridor as we continue to develop it. And again, I see that, Robert, I think it looks like you may want to address that. I'm not sure. I apologize if I didn't acknowledge you earlier.
No, it's fine. And I mean, we have touched on this, but just trying to make sure, because obviously there's still some confusion, and trying to be as clear about this as possible. Part of what we're tasked to do is, yes, there's we go by the Miami-Dade County models, and these transportation models that forecast future traffic look, socioeconomic data, land use, and those are the models saying that there's going to be an increase in population, so that equals and in employment, that equals more trips. And how the modes of split and how much of that is assigned to transit, how much of that is an increase in vehicular traffic, that's part of what the model does. Those are assumptions that we need to also abide by, and Stefan can talk more about that and make sure that our assumptions are approved by the department. But there's a lot of ways of dealing with that increase in employment and increase in population. If we were to just take this facility and widen it and add more lanes, that would not address the issues that are currently plaguing the I-195 corridor. you'd still have the exits and entrances, you still have the traffic backing up, you'd still have the speed differentials. So if I was to add 2 or 3 more lanes on each side to this facility, would do nothing in terms of addressing what's really hindering and impacting 195. So that is why, yes, by separating the traffic and doing it in the manner that we're doing, we're necessitating to add capacity because we're adding more lanes. But it's the facet and the nature in which we're doing it that's improving the traffic flow. So that's why it's kind of saying, you know, we're not just doing the same because we're adding lanes because we need to feed more traffic. We're trying to address an operational issue, and we're doing so by adding lanes at a different level to separate that traffic. And I know that's kind of, you know, maybe not super clear to everyone, but I just wanted to walk away that if we were to just come here and say, hey, you guys are just widening this because you want to deal with future demand, doing that alone would do nothing to really solve the issues, and it would not address all of the operational issues at the surface streets that are currently causing a lot of what backs up onto the interstate. So it really is try to be understanding of what the issues are and develop solutions that effectively deal with the key issues that are unique to this corridor. It may be different on 395 and it may be different almost on 595, but it's unique to how closely spaced these interchanges are, how little right-of-way there is, how much high density is not only there, but continues to be planned even without this project being on the books. So those are all the things that we're trying to balance as we're developing these concepts.
Thank you. And just to confirm, I apologize, I was scrolling through to make sure we had gotten to all of your questions. Mr. McIntosh, I don't know if you want to unmute and see if that helped clarify. We really appreciate when you follow up and feel like you haven't had your question answered, because in our heads we think we've addressed it, and if we haven't clearly enough, we need to make sure that everyone understands there is a complete corridor here with many different objectives as a part of it. And I think, Robert, you did an excellent job of helping us explain that. I think it helped me understand more. So essentially it would be is more because of the prioritization of the safety concerns and operational concerns. It necessitates the increase of the capacity in those lanes within the constraints of the project. So yeah, I can understand the priorities and how the solutions for those priorities intersects with the capacity in that regard. Thank you. And Mr. McIntosh, do you have any other follow-up questions?
No, I had a lot of questions, but a lot of them were answered throughout the call. And yeah, once again, thank you all for helping address these questions. It's deeply appreciated. I know it's a bit of a grilling, but yeah, it's just needing to know, and there's just not a good way to know except for asking as many questions.
No, that's what we're here for, and
we appreciate it.
Yep. You can tell your friends now that when we say we're going to stay on until every question is answered, we are not kidding here.
Thank you.
So you are welcome to also email us any additional questions. We are taking the comments you put in here and putting them straight into the record. But again, if you want to later this week or any week, just sort of write us more to incorporate, or if anyone on this call wants any of the updates that we're getting from our transit partners, we would connect you directly with them, but also stay in touch to make sure that you get your questions answered. We have another question from Mr. Wynn. It says, will there be an alternative besides no build provided, which does not include the viaduct and allows for dedicated transit lanes with the potential for future conversion to LRT/Baylink? The goal should be eventually car traffic reduction as those options improve. I'm not sure, Mr. Wynn, if you heard us address that earlier, because I know it's been about 45 minutes since you submitted this question. Can you unmute yourself and just confirm that you heard the answer to that question, and if you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, thanks for getting to it. I mean, to an
Absolutely.
extent, yes, it was clarified, and I understand that the viaduct is seen as kind of the best use of space and efficiency for, you know, reducing those conflict points and whatnot. But I just want to make sure that, you know, that it's really being taken into consideration that, you know, the idea of where things will be in the future is actually dependent on what you do with these projects, and that creates the scenarios. So the induced demand, you can induce demand to other results as well that can create different outcomes. And, you know, with regards to density and whatnot, if there's more density that goes up along these areas, and the county and the cities have agreed to eliminate parking minimums, then those density areas won't increase traffic flow for cars, but they will increase demand for transit options. So, I mean, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, those all of that is taken into consideration in the big picture, because this isn't, you know, I understand this isn't just about like a double-decker highway, or, you know, potentially shading seagrasses, which of course we don't want to do that. The Bay is taking a beating from literally everything as it is. So I just want to, you know, make sure that, you know, that the big picture of moving people, keeping people as safe as possible, and understanding that the transportation solutions that we have today may not be the answers for tomorrow. And I hope that all makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. I don't think there's anybody here that would disagree with you. In fact, you pretty much iterated FDOT's vision and mission and most recent Compass priorities that we presented. I do want to clarify something, and I don't know if I heard you correctly when you say that, you know, what we do here affects what transit or other agencies does. And I would, you know, kind of beg to differ, because when we're at this phase, we're actually asking them, what are your plans? Where do you want to go with this? What do you envision? What's in your long range transportation plan? You know, we're looking at projects that are in what is called the long range transportation plan that goes out to, you know, 2040, 2050. So just to be clear, they don't adjust to us, and, you know, we don't just adjust to them. In other words, you know, if they don't have something planned right now on this corridor, but in a few years, as we move along this project, they've been able to secure funding or looked at this as an area where they could connect their system, that would absolutely be as accommodated for as possible. And Robert, can you verify for me that I've said that correctly? Because I want to make sure people do not think that we're, you know, what we do here now precludes what happens with transit and or anything in the future. You know, the 395 project that many people are referring to took, you know, over 20 years to really get to today. It's a very different project today than it was, you know, when it was in its PD&E phase as well.
No, but I mean, I understand where the gentleman's coming from and a number of other people in terms of as best you can as you're planning this, you know, can that be provided? Can a envelope? The challenge on this project being that without that information, as you're mentioning, in an LRTP, in a vision, we have such limited space that to say, hey, we're going to provide for this, that's not even something that's being considered from a planning standpoint in the future by the transit agency, is where, you know, that's kind of where the challenge that we're at. Where does it make sense to always try to be as, you know, as forward thinking as possible and not preclude? Absolutely. And if in a perfect world, if there was even more right away to say, hey, we can do this and we can do that, I think in this corridor, at least again, within the section that we're referring to, there's other opportunities along the overall corridor, but within the section that we're looking at in terms of just leaving this envelope available without that vision, you're really sacrificing set needs by Miami-Dade County's long-range transportation plan in terms of addressing the safety, in terms of addressing traffic needs, to potentially not do some of the improvements needed to address that for this envelope of which there is no future plan for. So I think I understand completely where the sentiment comes from, but that's really where the challenge is for us right now without that lack of vision, we just don't have the space, again, in this portion to really say, hey, we can leave this envelope open and not utilize it. Now, is there things that we can do from a design standpoint, even with a viaduct, to say, hey, if there had to be modifications to this viaduct in the future to accommodate something? I mean, that's something we could look at in terms of where columns are being placed. Are we leaving room for future columns that are not interrupting, you know, local service streets as they're penetrating the ground? You know, how we lay those things out, there's definitely, you know, from a visioning standpoint, there's stuff that we could do to at least, you know, the greatest extent possible facilitate that in the future, while trying to do whatever cost savings we can and not having to completely redo this viaduct in 30, 40, 50 years. Again, should this move forward, I can't reiterate enough that this is still a plan and that nothing's been, you know, approved or anything near that. These are just concepts based from an engineering standpoint on what we know the needs are, what we know the constraints are, and how best to deliver on what the county and the department have stated that needs to be addressed along this corridor.
And I think, Robert, the last thing I want to add to that question is just a reminder, right? Earlier in the call, we heard from Commissioner Higgins. There are several Miami-Dade County commissioners represented along this corridor, as well as City of Miami Beach and City of Miami. And, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that, you know, you all are extremely educated, very good advocates for your communities. And, you know, in addition to telling us, although we will always pass that information on, it's important to share these needs and concerns with your county and city commissioners, which will be much more involved in both the local transit circulators and then the county transit options or other multimodal options. So I am not seeing any other questions here with the exception of Mr. Goldstein. I see your hand is up. I don't know if it was up from before. Can you let me know if you have another question? You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Maximiliano Goldstein.
Oh, no, sorry. I just don't know how it worked. I thought that I was lowering the hand before.
That's okay. We totally get it. I think I'm first going to make a last call for questions or comments. Please, if there's any question or comment, go ahead and hit the raise hand or put another comment in here so that we can see you. I think, Vanessa, just to be clear, can you unmute everybody and just be 100% certain we're not forgetting anybody at this point that has a question? And then if you're, again, interested in making another comment or question, please unmute yourself and we will see it in the box here. And does my team have anything left to say that we haven't said already? I know it's been a long night, and thank you for all of you. Sorry, I don't know. I think I don't know. So wait, did you guys hear me? I'm just letting the team say something if necessary. No? Good? Okay. I don't see any other comments. So I just want to remind you that on our website, first of all, the handouts are there. They give you exactly how to communicate with us and where we're at, like Robert said, at this point, preliminarily. We will be having an in-person meeting. The same exact information and discussion will be held there. In case you're wondering if that's a follow-up, no, it's an identical meeting. It's just another opportunity. And we just appreciate tremendously everyone jumping on board, staying in touch with us and commenting. And we ask that everybody has a safe evening and a wonderful evening. And we thank you so much for joining us in this meeting tonight.